Well, good evening, members, and welcome to this meeting of Full Council. I'm Councillor Andrew Hensman, Chairman of the Council, and I will be chairing the meeting this evening. I'd like to welcome all those in attendance this evening, and I'd also like to take this opportunity on behalf of all members to officially welcome our new Chief Executive, Dan Gascoigne, here at the top table rather than at the back, to the Council, and we look forward to working with you. This meeting is being webcast and it will be broadcast via the Council's YouTube channel. If members wish to speak this evening, please can you indicate by clearly raising your hand. For safety and those around you, members are requested to please remain seated when speaking on any item under consideration this evening. The meeting is scheduled for 3 hours, so we're bang on 7:15 start. And I would be grateful if anyone could ensure that they keep their speeches concise and to the issue being considered. We're not expecting a fire alarm this evening. However, in the event of an alarm, please leave via the fire exits. One over there, depending on where the fire is, and assemble in the car park. Can I also remind everyone to ensure they have their mobile devices switched to silent? And not looking at anyone in particular. I'll now proceed to the first item of business, agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. I've received apologies for absence from the following councillors: Councillor Bob Wright, Councillor Ian Pritchard, Councillor Michelle Weeks and Councillor Darren White. Are there any further apologies to note? Councillor Abbott.
Councillor Mrs Beavis will be here later, but she won't be absent, she'll be here later.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Thank you, members. So we'll proceed to item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting. Please can I have a proposer to approve the minutes as an accurate record of the meeting of Full Council held on the 25th of July 2022. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. And I seek a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Butland. The minutes have been moved and seconded as an accurate record. All those in favour, please indicate. Thank you, members. Nobody against or abstentions? No. So the minutes are approved. I will now take a few seconds to sign them. Thank you, members. We'll now proceed to agenda item 3, which is declarations of interests. Do members have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? If so, please can you state the item and the nature of your interest? Councillor Cunningham.
Mr Chairman, can I declare a non-pecuniary interest as a member of Essex County Council, please?
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Butland.
I declare a similar interest as a member of Essex County Council, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Courtauld.
Could I declare a non-pecuniary interest in that one of the cycleways that is proposed, the cycleway between Halstead and Earl's Cone, could in due course run over land which is part of the farm in which I'm a partner?
Thank you. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you. Non-pecuniary interest also in relation to item 9. I'm a member of the Earl's Cone to Kelvedon Plus cycling group, but I don't set its policy.
Councillor Thorogood.
Yeah, I'm a county councillor and I do attend the cycle committee meetings, but I'm not a committee member. I just attend as a guest occasionally.
Councillor Pell.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Item 5, looking at the audience, I think I do have a declaration. I am Chairman of Halstead Public Gardens Friends of, so I've got a feeling something's going to be said.
I wonder. Thank you, Mrs Pell. Councillor Schwer.
An MPI as a member of Essex County Council.
Thank you. Any other members? Thank you, members. We'll proceed to agenda item 4, which is public question time. Before we begin, I understand that one of our speakers, Mr. Maddox, is joining us remotely. I can see him up on the screen. Can I check with the governance officer that Mr. Maddox has been admitted to the meeting from the waiting room, please?
Chairman, I can confirm Mr. Maddox is with us, and prior to joining the start of the meeting, we have done the housekeeping check, so he has a good connection. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Wisby. We have 8 registered speakers for this evening's meeting, and I ask that Mr. Maddox, who's joining remotely, if you can keep your microphone switched to silent until I invite you to speak. Registered speakers have exactly 3 minutes each to make their statements or ask the question. A warning bell will be sounded at the expiry of the 3 minutes, and registered speakers must cease speaking at that time if they've not already done so, and I will not be allowing any additional time due to the number of speakers we've got. So, 6 of our speakers are talking in relation to the MOJ's Wethersfield prison proposal. We'll start with those, and then Councillor Buckland will provide a response to the one topic once all 6 speakers have spoken. So the first one we have is Mr. Alan Mackenzie. If you wish to speak in relation to the Members' Planning Forum and the Wethersfield Airbase, please come forward to the speaker's table, and you have 3 minutes to ask your question and make your statement.
You can hear me fine? Thank you. Mr. Chairman, given the Council has decided to press ahead with planning forums, which will enable the Planning Committee and Parish Councils to have much closer involvement in the pre-application process of developments, is it not right that the principle should be followed now in respect of the proposed huge, unsustainable £1 billion development to be built on a 300-foot high plateau in the middle of the beautiful Essex countryside, which would despoil the area forever? The Council has recognised that it has needed to do something to improve the pre-application process. How about doing it now, with a proposal as important as the one at Wethersfield Airbase? However, why did the Council not enable individual community input to the proposed forums? Does the Council think ordinary community members shouldn't have a right to have an input at that stage, even perhaps via an online portal? I would strongly suggest that without individual community involvement, lack of representation can be present and misrepresentation can be made. In terms of representation, I'm pleased to see Councillor Santamora here. Perhaps she would like to engage with SWAP and WASC, as I don't think she has had the pleasure. She hasn't been seen much in Freefield since September, I believe. And misrepresentation can be evidenced by the FOI obtained from BDC, which revealed that Councillors Butland, Tattersley and Santamora apparently met with Freefield Parish Councillors last September. Councillor Tattersley then emailed internally at BDC and contacted the MOJ's representatives telling them that the parish councils were in favour of the prisons, giving a completely false impression, which likely served to encourage the MOJ to pursue their proposal. These are reasons why the local community generally should have an opportunity to participate in planning forums to make sure they are represented properly and not misrepresented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mackenzie, for your statement. Please can you return to the public seating? Thank you. The next public speaker is Mr. Michael Allpress. You wish to speak in relation to the Levelling Up agenda in rural North Essex in connection with the Wethersfield prison proposal.
Yeah.
Again, you have 3 minutes to ask your question or make your statement.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, good. Okay, this is quite short, in fact. The Government's Infrastructure and Projects Authority Major Projects Portfolio 2021 lists 4 prison proposals to be built by 2027 at a total cost over their expected lifetime of £58.4 billion. For context, this is quite close to the current predicted cost of high-speed rail at £72 billion. The IPA document expresses doubts as to whether the prison building projects could be completed by 2027. The estimated build time at Wethersfield, for example, is 6 years. So my question is, given that the Government has stated the urgent need to reduce public spending, would the Council undertake to contact Mr James Cleverly MP, the Ministry of Justice and Her Majesty's Treasury to suggest that abandoning the Wethersfield prison proposal would go some way towards assisting the government in its task of reducing public spending?
Thank you, Mr. Rawpress. The next speaker is Mr. Jeremy Maddox, who has joined the meeting remotely, and I understand that you wish to speak in relation to the MOJ's proposal to build 2 prisons at the Wethersfield Air Base. Mr. Maddox, please unmute your microphone, and you have 3 minutes to ask your question or make a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Council. Can you hear me okay? Good. The Wethersfield Airfield Scrutiny Committee, WASC, produced a report and study on levelling up earlier this year. Levelling up, of course, has been a major part of government policy and has been eagerly adopted by Essex County Council and Braintree District Council. In particular, the leader of the council has focused on the need for levelling up in rural North Braintree, which is a deprived area according to Essex County Council. WASC's levelling up study demonstrates that positioning 2 huge prisons on the Wethersfield Air Base would in fact be a levelling down, lose-lose proposition. The report shows that far from levelling up, the prisons will level down, not just in rural North Braintree around Finchingfield and Wethersfield and other parishes, but will also level down in areas from where any potential prison employees may travel. A huge prison complex would create new problems in the Three Fields ward that would increase its relative deprivation through increased problems of mental health and well-being, crime, road congestion, pollution, damage to green spaces, community cohesion, and access to housing, and so on. Employment in the prisons would obviously not come from local areas around the proposed prisons, due to the rural nature of the community, the sparsity of the population, and the low unemployment rate. Therefore, the vast majority of jobs would likely come from further afield, perhaps from some of the Braintree market towns. However, the data shows that an area is less likely to be left behind if there is a high ratio of commuting in, such that the population is increased during the day, bringing obvious benefits. If the market towns see people commuting out, it adversely affects those towns. The provision of jobs within an area is important. Taking people away has adverse effects. The proposed prisons would be bad for Three Fields residents and bad for other areas of Braintree. My question is, will the Council agree to this statement and take appropriate action to deter the Ministry of Justice from pursuing this levelling down proposition any further? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Maddox, for your question. Please, can you mute your microphone? Thank you. Next speaker we have is Mrs. Beverly Alt, and you wish to speak in relation to the proposed mega prisons. Please come forward to the speaker's table. You have 3 minutes to ask your question or make your statement.
Good evening, Chairman and members. At the last council meeting in July, Mr. Alt asked a question about the difficulty in recruiting and retaining prison officers due to relatively low salaries and the lack of attraction of a job where you're in danger of assault both physically and verbally. He noted the catchment area overlap for recruitment, which would exist if prisons were placed at Wethersfield. Overlap would come between Chelmsford and High Point, as well as Little Hay in Huntingdon and Wayland in Thetford. Did all councillors a few days later receive the recruitment leaflet which was sent out by High Point to residents in Finchingfield and Wethersfield? When High Point can't even find employees to staff the existing prisons, what is it going to do when it is expanded by more than 700 places, an increase of over 50% on its current capacity of 1,373? How would that affect the areas around Wethersfield Air Base? Would it not make the proposed prisons even more unsustainable? The East of England already has a significant overcapacity of prison places for inmates from the East. Building 2 prisons at Wethersfield Air Base would add substantially to that overcapacity and therefore be an overspill for London and other regions. Would not the largest prison complex in the whole of Europe at Wethersfield become a complete white elephant and be an eyesore as the leader of the council currently describes the airbase in the middle of the beautiful Essex countryside. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ott, for your say. The next speaker is Miss Candice Trussler, and you wish to speak in relation to the Defence Infrastructure Organisation Stage 1 report on its plans for the Wethersfield Airbase.
Good evening. I would like some information about the repurposing of the Wethersfield airfield site and ask if the Council has read the Defence Infrastructure Organisation Stage 1 report. This report says, with reference to the building of the prisons being the primary use for the site, and I quote, "The primary use for the site would not be connected to the existing rural economy." Does the Council agree with this finding? And if the Council, having read this report, has not already told the MOJ that the site is not suitable for its proposals, as 3 other councils have already done, what are the Council's other reasons for allowing the building of these mega prisons on this historic, beautiful site? The report highlights 2 options for the site. Option 1 is to do little with it, which I can honestly say the locals would approve of. Option 2 is dependent upon the prisons being given the go-ahead. If our council grants the mega prisons planning permission, the MOJ will look into further planning permission starting with 1,000 houses on the site. Then a hotel looks to be the DIO's favourite, as the DIO has acknowledged travel to the prison for visitors would be challenging. The DIO report then gives a smorgasbord of proposals to maximise the use of the rest of the site. Most of these are ludicrous, unviable proposals to anyone with any local knowledge, a racetrack and a zoo being among them. Does anyone know if the people involved in drawing up this report have any knowledge of the financial struggles and logistics of Colchester Zoo, or research to discover Chelmsford actually has its good own racecourse with actual drivable roads and easy access? The buffet of ridiculous proposals continues. Maybe the rest of the site could be used as a boarding school, where no doubt the day-released prisoners could teach the children some handy tricks and even give them some career advice. Other proposed uses were a golf course, a gypsy and traveller site, I won't even start there, a wind farm, a waste and energy plant to go alongside the one at Rivenhall. Which of these uses for the rest of the site, after the building of the mega prisons and 1,000 houses, and the hotel to house prison visitors, would the Council support? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trussler. And the next speaker we have is Mr. Robert Clee, and you wish to speak in relation to the proposed prison development and the road infrastructure around Wethersfield. Again, you have 3 minutes to make your statement or ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. My question is, why does Braintree District Council believe the rural roads around Wethersfield are accessible for normal highway-suitable traffic? Braintree District Council wrote to the Ministry of Justice on the 18th of February 2016, saying, whilst the site is accessed via B Road, this should not constrain normal highway-suitable traffic, although it would need to pass through several villages. The rural roads connecting the proposed site and the A120 are currently in poor repair, unlit and in parts too narrow to accommodate an HGV and an oncoming car. Current outstanding repairs include crumbling edges and many potholes. Essex Highways have recently marked some of the faults with different colours indicating priority to repair. The prison development phase will last over 6 years. After ground preparation, construction would require something like 30,000 huge precast concrete panels to be transported. These will be carried by large numbers of HGVs along 7 miles of narrow, rural, unlit roads. Construction will also require a large number of daily van and lorry movements for the construction workers and associated construction materials. After the construction phase, there will be 3,430 offenders plus staff. The staff, together with the daily deliveries and visitors to the prison, will increase the number of vehicle movements in and around the area, forever increasing the pressure on the local rural road network. The Essex Highways Pothole Action Fund report of 2021 attributes heavy traffic as a cause of potholes. This rural community should therefore expect that if the prison proposal goes ahead, The quality of its roads will deteriorate substantially during the development phase of the prison due to the heavy traffic, both in terms of volume and weight of vehicle. During the construction phase, some of the faults will become dangerous and immediate repairs will be required if road users are to remain safe. Due to the narrowness of the roads in some parts, some of these repairs will require diversions to be put in place, leading to delays, disrupted journeys and increased pollution. These rural roads also see a broader range of road users than most. The prison development will reduce the safety of more vulnerable road users, typical of a rural setting, pedestrians, cyclists, which is a popular leisure activity in this area, horse riders and agricultural machinery. The current levels of traffic may not unduly constrain road users. However, the increase in traffic commensurate with the development of Wethersfield as two prisons would definitely constrain traffic. The Council appears to have replied on the basis of traffic existing at the time of its reply. However, it needed to reply on the basis of anticipated levels based on this and other developments. What evidence did Braintree District Council rely on in the 14 days it took to reply to the Ministry of Justice to support the Council's statement that the development should not constrain normal highway suitable traffic? Thank you.
That is perfectly on time. Thank you. And we've now had the speakers on the prison, etc., and I'll invite Councillor Butland to respond to these statements. And can I remind speakers you have no right of reply. Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the speakers. I will deal with each one in turn. I won't make any comment on some of the personal comments which have been made. I will stick purely to the actual issues. If I can start first with Mr. Mackenzie and his question about planning forums. When a planning application is being considered, when a major planning application is being considered, local residents and stakeholders are engaged by the developer prior to the application being submitted and are able to ask questions and suggest changes and amendments to the plan before a formal application is submitted. Similarly, in most cases, a major application is subject to pre-application with council officers who are able to comment and suggest changes to what is being proposed before receiving a formal application. At present, there is no mechanism for members of the Planning Committee to have a similar opportunity prior to the determination of the application at a Planning Committee, and as such, a members' forum, which we have in the process of establishing, is a way of redressing the balance to ensure that members have the same opportunities as local stakeholders and officers already have to engage prior to the formal submission. The members' forum is not intended to be a replacement for those other forms of engagement. In other words, the engagement of stakeholders and local residents. So that is the answer there. Training is soon to be established for members of the Planning Committee regarding the operation of the planning forums. I'll now move on, Chairman, to the second question from Mr. Oldpress, which was about infrastructure projects and the cost. The answer to that is that matters of central government spending are a matter for central government, who will make decisions on that, and I suspect they are having to make some very difficult decisions over a number of issues of government expenditure. The third speaker, Mr. Jeremy Maddox, raised the issue about levelling up and in North Essex and the employment situation. To Mr. Maddox, I would say that if an application is submitted, it would include information on the employment and economic impacts of the proposals. These would be considered in detail through the application process and will be available in the event of an application for residents to comment on during the formal consultation process. Turn now to Mrs. Beverly Alt, who raised the issue about recruitment campaigns, etc. Mr. Chairman, recruitment campaigns for prisons are a matter for the Ministry of Justice. However, if an application was submitted for new prisons in Wethersfield, we would expect as a council and as a planning authority This to include information about the workforce and the way in which that workforce would access the site. This would be available for the public to comment on during the formal consultation. I turn next to Ms Candice Trussler, who raised the issue of a report by the Defence Infrastructure Organisation. I believe that the report to which the Member of Public refers to is an internal DIO document considering various options for the site, which was recently published through a Freedom of Information request. If any planning applications for use on the airbase is submitted to the Council, whether it be for prisons or any other use as outlined by Ms Trussier, they will need to be considered on their individual merits in line with the national and local policies in place at the time, evidence presented by the applicant and consultation responses received. Finally, Mr Robert Clee, who I think is a neighbour of Ms Trussler, he raised the issue about highways, which of course I would remind members is one that I raised a long time ago. The Council made very clear in its responses in 2016 that these were brief responses and the MOJ provided no detail on what might be proposed other than the questions which everyone will have seen in the letter. The answers were necessarily general. In this instance, officers took the phrase normal highway traffic to mean was the physical road able to accommodate the size of construction traffic, not the volume which was not provided in the question. Hence the response about normal sized traffic. As those who have seen the letter will know, in several other places the Council highlighted the rural nature of the roads, the distance from the strategic highway network and the lack of public transport. If any application for any use on the airbase is submitted, this will need to be accompanied with detailed transport assessments, which will be considered in detail by the Highway Authority, including for both construction traffic and long-term traffic associated with the use proposed. Mr Clee mentioned the issue of potholes along that area and the fact that some of them have now been identified for filling. That, Mr Chairman, is down to the local county councillor for that area, myself, who has taken that matter up, and I hope they will be filled at the earliest opportunity. I hope, Chairman, that that answers in detail all of the questions that have been raised by members of the public.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. So the next public speaker is Mr Michael Staines, and you wish to speak in relation to the Council's recycling target and recycling strategy. And again, you have 3 minutes to ask your question or make your statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Why is it important to increase recycling in the Braintree district, and what practical steps can help? Recycling last leapt forward in 2011 when food waste was diverted from green waste and black bins, stopping nasty gases being released to the atmosphere from landfill. Before that, in the late 90s, it was the clear recycling sacks that reduced material going to landfill after a bit of a fight in this chamber. Since then, a lot has changed, but have our recycling targets and processes kept up? Have residents become complacent, or do they want to do and know more now than they did then? Why are recycling levels stubbornly stuck at around 50%? All black bin waste currently goes to Stanway landfill. Increasing recycling has added 4 years to the Stanway life, so it will now not be filled up until 2026. No recyclable cans, paper, electricals or plastics are recovered at Stanway. Clear sack recycling goes up the A12 to Ipswich to a site which recycles and incinerates. What steps can BDC consider to increase its recycling levels? Contractually, it could require its recycling to be recycled. Currently, approximately 1 in 4 of those bags, carefully streamed by residents, is not recycled, it's incinerated. Let's hit up black bins. Let's increase the frequency of recycling collections. For example, make clear sacks weekly. Add waste electrical and electronic equipment. and at the same time reduce the frequency of black bin collections in line with the reducing volume of really non-recyclable waste, because after all, black bins shouldn't be stinky, after all. The current black wheelie bin fleet could be progressively replaced with lower capacity models, reflecting the goal and ability for residents to recycle more and more and more. Perhaps residents can be incentivised with a council tax discount for taking a smaller black bin. What's going into the black bins? Some mechanical, biological and technological effort could sort and analyse black bag content, highlighting collection areas which don't recycle well, and provide additional measures and education to improve them. BDC could put helpful fun advice on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook and even fridge magnets to increase recycling, as many films and rappers are now recycling too. Oh, stop the clock. BDC could also ask retailers to group products together with highly recyclable packaging, like a free-from aisle, to help customers select these products confidently and quickly. Visualise yourself that says, fully recyclable in Braintree District. A nice range of products that grows and grows and grows. Why? Well, Indava, the Belgian incinerator operator currently building in Rivenhall, has just signed its first contract for 40,000 tonnes a year of waste to be incinerated with a not-so-local authority, so they'll be burning trash trucked into the district from outside. Rivenhall won't stream waste. It will all go into the incinerator, just like all the black bags arriving at Stanway that go into the ground.
Thank you, Mr. Staines. That's your time.
Maybe can I take some of Michael's time, which wasn't used?
No, you can't, I'm afraid. However, we do have the full transcript.
You do have my last two paragraphs, that's correct.
We'll be able to.
Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, that's it. Thank you. Councillor Button, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to Mr. Staines. Mr. Staines will be aware that his colleagues, Councillor Abbott and Councillor Thorogood and Councillor Walsh, already have an item on the agenda tonight, a motion relating to this. I'm sure members will have heard what Mr. Staines has said and will reflect upon that while we discuss the motion put forward and the amendment as well. So thank you for that, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. And we now have Mr. Tim Harrison. You wish to speak in relation to the agenda item number 7 this evening, which is the motion by Councillor Mrs. Dervish, the England ladies football team. You have 3 minutes to make your question or statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, on behalf of Turling Ladies Cricket Club and Turling Cricket Club, we would like to echo the motion put forward by Councillor Dervish for this evening. As chairman of a local community sports club, the hardest thing for us to do is achieve diversity in a typically male-oriented sport. Furthermore, as we're self-funded, this poses an even greater challenge for us to be current, incorporating safeguarding and increased diversity. We're proud of what we've achieved over the past few years. We now have a number of girls playing cricket from ages 5 to 8, and also a number of young ladies joining our Colts and women's cricket and softball sessions. Furthermore, we have a membership of over 30 women who regularly practice. Some are even here tonight to support. Women in sport is hugely important, not only for the health benefits, but the increased social activity, and also can provide a refuge for women with difficult home lives or work lives. This year, England's women's rugby team head to New Zealand for the Rugby World Cup. They actually won at the weekend. As favourites. England women's cricket are ranked 3rd in the world, and our Lionesses, the footballers, are ranked 4th. Dare I say it, our women are statistically better than our men. The only way we continue to be at the top of the rankings is by continued investment, not only from the governing bodies like the ECB, RFU and FA, but from local councils who, in my opinion, have an obligation to ensure safe and well-maintained facilities for public use. Given the level of housing development locally and the Section 106s that this brings in, a greater allocation of this funding should be allocated towards grassroots sport to enable them to flourish and offer activities for both men and women. We are completely self-funded. We rely on membership fees to exist. We do not use council funding to maintain our facility, and as a village we all pay our council tax. Yet, as an organisation, we do not see the direct benefit, unlike other organisations in other towns and villages. Can we have access to the purse to help maintain and grow our facility, to enable us to welcome more women and girls into our club? Local councils should be promoting women's sport on a far greater scale, riding on the coattails of the women's football successes, the increased televised nature of the 100 in the cricket, bringing in more and more women into the sport. It's impossible to just start these ventures. It takes time and money. Will the Council commit to increasing funding into women's grassroots sport? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I'll again invite Councillor Buckland to respond to your statement.
One of my colleagues, Chairman, is responding.
I understand he's not.
Councillor Tattersley is responding.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd prepared a response to Councillor Derbyshire motion on this one, and I have to say there are quite a number of girls and women's sporting activities that the Council supports through its funding of the leisure facilities that we've got across the district. And I will be, rather than doing it now, I would prefer to do it, Chairman, at the time that I respond to Councillor Derbyshire's comments. And of course, it's not just football that we support. And I've got some statistics about the other activities that are primarily for girls and women that we do support through the leisure facilities. So I don't quite understand the comment about the council isn't funding stuff, because we do provide leisure facilities with sporting stuff, and I've sat in this chamber many times arguing to replace all-weather pitches and sporting areas, so which are available for people across the district. But that's not to say that we're satisfied about it. So if you're prepared just to wait and listen to what I say with Councillor Derbyshire, that might be better.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. Unexpected, but we will wait for the stats to come up as part of Councillor Derbyshire's motion. So, members, the reply by Councillor Tattersley concludes this evening's public question time session. Can I thank all the speakers once again for their questions and statements this evening. You're all welcome to remain and watch the meeting. Alternatively, you're free to go whenever you like. Governance officers, can you please disconnect Mr. Maddox from the meeting? I wish you good evening, but you can continue to watch us on the YouTube channel via the webcast. So we'll give the speakers a few seconds. And we'll do our bit for saving some energy by switching the projectors off. Once the fans switch off, we'll continue to item 5. There we go, which is announcements and statements from myself and the leader of the council. So my announcements are, since my last council announcements, who would have predicted what we went through, and we lost our beloved Queen Elizabeth II. Despite this terrible, sad loss for our country, I was extremely honoured to deliver the local proclamation for our new head of state, King Charles III, as we enter the new Carolean era and close the second Elizabethan era here in England, Wales. It was wonderful to see so many residents come out for this evening, and heartwarming to see the tributes left for Queen Elizabeth II. A big well done to all staff who were involved in the coordination of these events, and I can tell you, having seen behind the scenes, it was no mean feat. Members, we've received resignations from 2 of our district councillors, colleagues. The first resignation is that of Dean Wallace. Dean was elected to the council in May 2019, representing the Braintree South Ward, and the second resignation is that of Nick Unsworth, and Nick was also elected in May 2019 to represent Coggeshall Ward. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank both Dean Wallace and Nick Unsworth for their service to the district and wish them both well and all the best for the future. I've attended a total of 30 engagements since the end of July, some of the highlights being the Braintree Volunteer Awards, which is always a great event celebrating those who give so much to our community. The prize winner especially being transported precariously by Tracy Parry up onto the stage, live streamed from Hong Kong. And we also had the long-anticipated opening of the plaza at Great Notley, which I believe was Dan's first outing in the hot seat, where I was also honoured to deliver the opening speech. I have a nice long list of engagements, please, and I'm not going to read them all out. But as there's a agenda item on cycling, we did have a Bike Awareness Day, which started at Causeway, repairing my badly maintained cycle, and then a ride out into the Essex countryside, past Horizon 120, and the amazing things that you can see. You will no doubt know that I attended many events in respect to the late Queen Elizabeth and the new King Charles, from gun salutes to Thanksgiving services to reading the proclamation. How many people did that? And then, as I've mentioned, the Plaza grand opening. And my last one, which is today, and was mentioned by the public speakers earlier, it's World Mental Health Day. And today, the council colleagues had drop-in sessions, both here in Causeway, down in Unit 4, and in the other operations unit, for staff to drop in. And I'm sure that you would all join with me to say it's not just about one day's awareness, it's every day. And it's no mean feat to be able to live with that. And it's even braver for those people who come forward and actually say, hey, can I get some help? Or those colleagues who have made themselves known to support others in the form of our mental health champions, both in departments, and you also have Councillor Diana Garrett and myself as the council representatives on the Mental Health Challenge for this administration. So I think it's appropriate that we do mention and always remember about mental health. It's unfortunately for life, not just for a day. Finally, I'd like to make a special announcement on behalf of Councillor Mrs. Schmidt, and I know that she loves these announcements, that on the 7th of September, the results of Anglia in Bloom were announced. This year, the amazing volunteers of Halstead in Bloom had sadly decided not to enter the competition, but we weren't going to let Halstead go away that easily. So this council decided that we would enter some of our open spaces in Halstead instead. And guess what? I'm delighted to tell you the results. That in the wildlife conservation category, Mill Chase Playing Field, silver gilt. Riverwalk Halstead, the silver gilt. Cemeteries and crematoria category. Well, we've got wonderful teams working every day, looking after these just as part of their day-to-day business. And Halstead Cemetery was awarded gold. Parks, Halstead Public Gardens, you're not going to be surprised at this, it got gold. So this year's Anglia in Bloom then put all the parks that entered, regardless of size, into one final category, and it is with the greatest of pleasure that I can tell you that Halstead Public Gardens was the overall winner in this category. So it's worth noting that no extra or special work was carried out before entering. This is just the normal standard that our exceptional staff achieve and maintain, and some of them are here this evening. So grateful thanks to Rick Sargent, Peter Nice, and the rest of the horticultural team, and of course our wonderful volunteers, because they do help throughout the year in these spaces. And we have here with us this evening Esme, is it McCambridge? Yeah. Peter Nice, and Andy Potter from operations. And you can now see them all there. And I'd like to personally thank you for all your efforts in ensuring that the council was successful in achieving the recognition in these 4 categories. Members, now you can join me in that round of applause. now invite Councillor Wendy Schmidt to be suitably embarrassed at getting yet another award and certificates to add to her ever-long growing collection.
Thank you indeed, Chairman. Before I get up, I would just like to... Well, there's nothing much I can say. You read out my statement perfectly, I may add. Yes, what is so amazing is the fact that nothing extra, nothing special was done. This is the standard that we get from our operations team, our horticultural team. And it is something that we need to be extremely proud of. And in fact, Peter comes here with such regularity. I was thinking about perhaps having a special place so he could come all of the time. But then that would be cruel to you, Peter. But yes, I would just like to present them because particularly the overall challenge was really quite remarkable. And as I said, we know from the regularity that the team come here how well they do with our playing fields, all of our open spaces. But this is just more than the icing on the cake. Thank you.
Esmond, Peter, and we're getting the public recognition that you more than deserve. You've got these beautiful...
Come forward. I know they are, that's why I'm trying to get them.
I really don't know why Peter's shy, because absolutely everybody in Halstead knows Peter. So there's your lovely certificate. But this, I mean, it's a very, very special trophy for a very, very special team. And bless you all, we are so proud of you. Thank you all so very, very much. We wouldn't need you, but really, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. You more than do. Thank you all so much. And you may escape if you wish.
No, they can't. No, they can't. No, they can't. Because Councillor Mrs. Pell would like to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to endorse everything that you have said and Councillor Smith has said. I represent Halstead Residents Association, so that is residents who live in Halstead. They love that park. They love the cemeteries and all the other things because of the way they're kept. The staff are approachable, especially over the Jubilee, the work that went in over the Jubilee, because it made extra work, although we had our own litter pickers out in it. But nothing is too much trouble for them, and they allow Halstead in Bloom to assist them to do things, which it's working together. And also, the Jubilee, I've never seen that public gardens so packed. There wasn't a space anywhere to do some of the things that happened. As you know, you came yourselves. But it isn't just the people, it's also the wildlife. Only this weekend, there's a picture on Facebook of a man stopping the traffic, allowing the ducks to migrate from the public gardens to the house opposite, and they do that every day, there and back. And there was about 100 ducks, and they live in the public garden. So it isn't just humans, it's wildlife as well, that those public gardens. But I'd like to say Peter is always there because I'm also chairman of the Public Gardens Management Committee. Peter, if there's anything that I know, should know, he usually emails me, and he always answers my emails, even if it's over a weekend. And I can't speak highly enough of all the staff, those that are not here and everything else, that we do appreciate it and we love our park. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would absolutely echo that. Halstead Public Gardens became my second home over the Jubilee weekend, and you really did do this district proud. Halstead really knows how to show off, and quite right. So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd like to escape, you may. If you want to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting, you may. But I know which option you're going to choose. So, well done once again. Always pleasing to have a positive note to these meetings. Thank you, members. I'd now like to invite Councillor Graham Butland, Leader of the Council, to make any announcements that he has. Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Chairman. I have one announcement which I would like to make, and that relates to investment zones in England. Since we last met as a council, clearly there has been a new leadership in the government and has seen the publication of a growth plan. The growth plan for the country includes an intention by the government to establish a number of investment zones in the country. I sent to all members last week a copy of a letter that I received from the Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing in Communities, Simon Clarke, in which he set out a number of points about investment zones. I think the important thing is the second paragraph of that letter, when he said, "I must be clear, investment zones are not about rolling back environmental protections across the country, nor imposing unrealistic and unsuitable housing and development on places. Investment zones will be specific sites put forward and agreed to by local areas that will drive economic growth and investment across a wider geography in a way that is right for them. Zones will not be dictated by central government." I think that's very important, because I think without those commitments, the view of many on investment zones may have been somewhat different. The Secretary of State has asked all upper tier authorities, which in our case is Essex County Council, to submit expressions of interest, and they have until the 14th of October, which is this coming Friday, to submit those proposals. Essex County Council has worked closely with all the second tier authorities, district, borough and city councils, and with the exception of one of those authorities, all the remaining authorities have indicated an appetite for examining and progressing an interest, although it has to be said there are still a number of details which many of us will want to know before finally committing to investment zones. However, if one wants to be sort of in with a chance, and it's considered that it would be worth doing, one has to express an initial interest in doing that. So I can confirm that along with 11 of the 12 district, borough and city councils, I have, as leader, expressed support for the county council as the upper tier authority in going forward with proposals, a number of proposals across the county. I don't for one moment expect all of them to be accepted, but certainly we would put forward them, and as far as Braintree is concerned, one of the key areas would be Horizon 120, which is a publicly owned site, therefore one that we can exercise significantly more control over than a private site, and also where we could move quickly if the right deal was on the table. So I just wanted members to know that. Those proposals will go in from Essex County Council on Friday, and we will then have to await from central government its views on all the expressions of interest that are submitted across the whole of England. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Batman. We'll now proceed to agenda item 6, which is the motion by Councillor James Abbott on recycling targets. Members, following the publication of this report, as set out on pages 5 and 6 of the agenda, an amendment to the published motion was received in accordance with the Council procedure rules. Councillor Abbott and Councillor Thorogood, as the proposer and seconder of the original motion, were consulted and have consented to the amendment. As a consequence of this acceptance, the amended motion is now the substantive motion to be considered this evening. Members, please can I remind you that an addendum report setting out the amended motion was published and circulated to all members on Friday the 7th of October, and will be referring to the addendum report for the debate. As Councillor Abbott and Councillor Thorogood, the proposer and seconder of the motion, are present, this item may proceed. Councillor Abbott, Please can you formally move your motion, and please can I remind you that before you make your speech on your motion it must be seconded.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I formally move the motion as tabled on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Thorogood, you are recorded as the seconder of this motion. Please confirm that you second this motion, and do you wish to speak after Councillor Abbott's speech or reserve your right?
Yes, I second this motion and I would like to reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorogood. Members, the motion has been formally moved and seconded by Councillor Abbott and Councillor Thorogood. I'll now invite Councillor Abbott to make his speech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Recycling was one of the first issues I got involved with even before I became a councillor in the 1980s. And winding back the clock several decades to that time, recycling in this district and indeed across Essex was less than 10%. One of the few materials that was collected was glass, and many other materials weren't collected at all. Essex County Council moved to develop the first version of its waste strategy in the late 1990s and early 2000s. But we warned, even all those years ago, that it was a flawed strategy, and I think events, I would say unfortunately, have proved we were right, at least in part. The Tovey project at Basildon has failed. The building will now have to be demolished, and it means that all black bin waste in Essex is currently being sent to landfill instead of being treated at all. So even with black bin waste, you could extract some recycling from it, and that's not happening. In this district, lots of positive measures emerged in the subsequent years: curbside dry recycling collections, food waste collections, green waste collections, garden waste in other words, promotion of composting at home, waste electrical collections, and a lot more. And I think the council, generally has done a very good job in that and in promoting it to residents. However, the fact is that recycling has remained stuck in this district and indeed across Essex at about 50%, plus or minus 5 or 10%. It goes up or down a bit. Indeed, BDC's latest figure, as reported to the Cabinet meeting earlier this evening, is almost exactly 50%. So we on this side in the G&I group believe that we need to review and reinvigorate the policy and bring in measures to increase recycling. And also remove barriers to recycling, and one of which I would in this chamber before, which is the Essex County Council run recycling centres. Particularly if you look at the Whittam Centre, there are a number of restrictions there on what people can take. And there are as many signs as you can imagine telling you what you can and can't do. I believe we need to make our recycling centres more friendly, welcoming and accepting more materials. The current target is 60% across Essex, which actually has never been reached across the county as a whole. We are proposing an ambitious target through this motion, which I hope Council will accept tonight, with the amendments which we have accepted, of 75% by the year 2030. Now, I don't for a minute say this is not an ambitious target. It is an ambitious target. However, it's worth reminding ourselves that in 2020/21 year, there were 9 local authorities in England which already had recycling in the 60 to 65% range, with St Albans being the top at 64.2%. So that's significantly higher than we're achieving, and it's significantly higher than the current 60% target. So if anyone says it can't be done, it can be done, and it's already being done in authorities such as St Albans. Improving waste minimisation and recycling will move us up the waste hierarchy and reduce the risk of both landfill and waste incineration. And of course, a discussion like this tonight would not be complete without discussing the elephant in the room for this district, which is the construction, which is now underway, of one of the largest waste incinerators, not just in the UK, but in Europe, which has the potential to burn nearly 600,000 tonnes of waste a year. And as we heard from Mr Staines earlier, has already signed contracts to bring in 40,000 tonnes of waste from outside this country, every single ounce of which, in old money, will be brought in by HGVs into Braintree districts along the road network. Much of the input is likely to come from outside the county. So we've got lots of incentives to improve recycling and to reduce both landfill and waste incineration. and in general to develop a greener what's called a circular economy. And as I said towards the start, I don't for a minute say that this isn't going to be easy, and I think there's some welcome suggestions in the amendment put forward by the Conservatives that we need to review exactly how we're going to do this. But I would hope all members can support this so the Council can move forward with more ambition and focus on this topic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Do any members wish to speak on this motion? If so, please indicate by raising your hand. And I will make a list of those who have indicated with the assistance of the monitoring officer and then use my discretion as to which order I will call each member. Please keep your hands raised until you've been acknowledged. Councillor Tattersley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I very much welcome this motion, if only to make comment on some of the issues that get raised every time the recycling figures are reported. I've been involved in recycling for most of my working life, and I personally believe that to be successful, recycling has to have the support of our communities. And there's no doubt at all in my mind that the current very high customer satisfaction rates we enjoy is because of the balance we have between enforcement of recycling rules and the types of facilities that we provide. We should be proud of our existing recycling rate, but of course not complacent. Now, there are a number of ways that we could increase recycling, in addition to the many helpful comments that were made earlier, which I thought there were some first-class comments that could be made in that one. But other ones that we could do, that have been done by St Albans and others, is that we could give every household additional wheeled bins for curbside collection, for glass, collection of plastic and paper. We could ban sideways. We could reduce the amount of residual waste, which in turn increases the recycling percentage. We could insist the lids on residual bins are capable of being closed. We could rigidly enforce the rules that grey bins that contain recycled materials are not collected. The problem with all this, to my mind, is that I believe customer satisfaction with our system would fall, and simply chasing ideological high standards at the expense of high satisfaction would be counterproductive. And I would urge the Working Party to be aware the dangers of alienating our communities simply to appease some green agenda on recycling.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. Councillor Van Dalken.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And I'm speaking as the Cabinet Member for this part of operations, the waste and recycling. Braintree Council is, of course, always committed to ensuring that the disposal of waste and recycling are carried out in efficient, cost-efficient, effective and environmentally friendly manners, while at the same time offering a consistently high level of service to our more than 160,000 residents, and indeed many businesses. It's worth reminding Council that BDC gets consistently high consumer satisfaction marks from our residents, as mentioned by my colleague Councillor Tattersley, a recognition which we very much wish to sustain and indeed improve on in coming years. And there's no question that we should, as a society and as consumers, seek to reduce the amount of waste material which is sent to landfill or for incineration. This can be broadly achieved by consuming less and by sustainable disposal of what remains of waste, as highlighted in the motion. There's a useful phrase that we hopefully all know to sum it all up: reduce, reuse and recycle. So we try to start by reducing what we consume. We try to reuse as much as possible when we've finished using it. And finally, recycle or compost what cannot be reused. Improving recycling figures is very much an educational task. To try, for instance, to ensure that there's no contamination of paper or plastics,
to ensure that as much as possible of the material put out for recycling by residents is actually accepted by the MRF, the Materials Recycling Facility in Ipswich, and that cardboard, for instance, is not left out in the rain and therefore useless the night before collection. All types of such small action by residents can come together to improve recycling figures, and Braintree has done a great deal of work to publicise best practice by residents in relation to recycling, and will continue to do so. Let me now talk for a minute about figures and realities to give the motion some context for members. At the moment, Braintree recycles roughly 50% of what is collected from the doorsteps of residents, a figure which has been, as we admit, relatively static for some time. While the Essex Waste Partnership recycling target for its members, of which we are one, is 60%. So an ambition to reach 75%, as well as to get Essex authorities to accept such a figure, is certainly a huge challenge. To give further context, and bearing in mind that different countries and authorities recycle different materials in different ways, areas such as Wales and Germany are held up as amongst the most successful in recycling and composting, consistently claiming figures of 60% and more. Both rely heavily on incineration to dispose of their residual waste, in many cases also incinerating recyclates to generate power, which they can claim as recycling, in inverted commas. They also have regimes which involve financial penalties for residents, for side waste, for putting bins out on the wrong day, or contaminating recyclates with incorrect material. In the particular case of Wales, a devolved government with a population of about 3 million, they hold out threats of huge fines in the millions of pounds to local authorities for not meeting the required recycling targets. These are not now currently ways of working which exist in Braintree or Essex more widely. Two final points to be considered in relation to the motion. One, the realities of Essex, where we are part of the Essex Waste Partnership, which indirectly provides us with our 2 recycling centres in Braintree Town and in Witham, and coordinates matters redisposal and movement of waste, for instance, which need to be considered on an Essex-wide basis for the purpose of scale, if nothing else. The Essex Waste Strategy, under which we would operate, is being worked on and will probably become active in 2024. The second point is, and of more immediate importance, is we still await final statutory guidance and regulations in the form of national supplementary legislation to the Environment Act 2021 before making commitments in terms of resources to potentially expensive changes to our waste and recycling arrangements. This is the background to the final part of our amendment, where we suggest that the cross-party working group should be established once the relevant regulations and statutory guidance has been issued, which could in fact be any day, following which it can work on providing costed and viable proposals which will help Braintree with the ambition of achieving considerably higher recycling figures. I hope that members will join me in supporting the amended substantive motion.
Thank you, Councillor Dalkin. Any other members wish to speak? Councillor Schmidt.
Thank you, Chair. Often the Green and Independent group tell us how we're not doing things well or how we could do them better, but that's all they say. So I do hope that they haven't just plucked this figure of 75% from thin air, because with us recommending to have a cross-party working group, this will give them the opportunity to tell us what needs to be done to reach this target. And of course, even more importantly, for budgeting purposes, what the cost to the public will be. I look forward to hearing their recommendations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Mrs. Schmidt. Anyone else? No? Councillor Thorogood, then, as you reserved your right and haven't spoken, you may speak now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chairman. First of all, just come back to what Councillor Tassley said. I think wanting to increase recycling, it shouldn't be ideological. It should just be common sense, really, and a practical thing. I'm sure everyone can agree that it's something that we should all want to do, is reduce waste and recycle more. It's not really ideological. Coming back to what Councillor Van Dolken said, I agree. Greater education is needed to reduce contamination is a big factor. When we went to visit Great Blakenham, they said one in 4 sacks isn't, or the equivalent of 1 in 4 sacks of clear waste isn't recycled, and that can be largely due to contamination because people haven't washed out certain items, or they put something else in a bag which shouldn't be recycled, and that causes the whole bag not to be recycled and goes off to be incinerated instead. Similarly, I agree with Councillor Van Dolken. He says about education in that certain items, for instance, at Great Blakenham, they don't recycle anything smaller than 5 centimetres. So a lot of people, they might put a bottle in a recycling bag but not attach the top. Now, although the bottle top might be a different colour, it's actually the same grade of plastic these days, and when it's attached, it will be recycled. But if it's separated, it won't. And you might say, well, that's just a bottle top. But if you get a million bottle tops together, it soon adds up. So, and just to come back to what Councillor Wendy Smith said, there are, having been to Great Blakenham and had a look at the site, although the visit was cut short by a fire, there was, like I say, I think there is scope to increase recycling. The fact that smaller items aren't recycled, that seems to be the criteria that they set. They seem to set a very high bar, so I think we could talk to them as our partners to see if that can be lowered, because they said the reason why is because small items can't be bundled together. Now, surely if plastic is grouped together in a sealed container, it can still be transported. It doesn't have to be put together in bales. Similarly, last month I was invited to talk rubbish to Kelvedon WI, which was a very pleasant evening I had. Tea and cake at the end was the lure for me, and I was able to speak a bit rubbish, but I was able to invite an officer along from the Environment Department, Carolyn Harley, who actually did most of the heavy lifting, and she gave a talk on where our waste goes. And one of the things that could help slim our bins is that a lot of soft plastics, which we don't collect, can be taken to supermarkets, and we don't make enough of this. I don't think we publicise enough. These items are the film lids on meat and fruit packets, crisp packets, snack wrappers, bread bags, the cereal packet bags inside the cardboard, and even bubble wrap. But also yoghurt pot lids, salad and fruit and vegetable bags, and even pet food pouches. Now, pet food pouches are a bit of a difficult one because they do require quite a lot of washing out before they can be recycled. So that is something we need to look at, because then you have to balance the water usage. So that might not be such a good example. But all these other items, I mean, I didn't know actually until this talk that bubble wrap could be recycled. That was a new one on me. But I did know that the soft plastics that my children do eat quite a lot of crisps, unfortunately, and they do get taken back to the supermarket to be recycled, as do bread bags. So I think we can slim the bin if we make that more publicised, because I think in the recent calendar that went around, we do state quite clearly what can be recycled that we pick up as an authority, but we don't say what can be collected at supermarkets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorogood. Thank you, members. I'd like to invite Councillor Abbott as the proposer of the motion to close the debate. And can I remind you that you should confine your reply to the previous speeches and you should not introduce any new matters. So over to you, Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all members who've spoken on our motion. In response to Councillor Tassley, where he raised a number of things which may or may not happen if we did have higher recycling targets, and he mentioned glass collections, Well, of course, this district has a superb network of bring banks for glass. That's always been its policy, and we are certainly not suggesting at this point in time that it's collected curbside. It's a shame he used the phrase ideological policies of green agenda, and as Councillor Thorogood said, this is about common sense and a circular economy and all the things actually which local government and national government say we should be doing. So we're not, I don't think we're being ideological at all. In terms of customer satisfaction, yes, the District Council does have good levels of customer satisfaction. I think the feeling that residents have, particularly in one corner of the district, about waste and recycling is going to be dramatically different if they, as I said previously, if they have one of the biggest waste incinerators in Europe on the doorstep, with hundreds of thousands of tonnes of waste being trucked in on a regular basis. So we've got a huge incentive to improve recycling rather than having that. With regards to what Councillor Van Dorken said, yes, fully agreed on avoiding contamination. That's a very important issue. And it's why we need to get one of the main contaminants out of the waste stream, which is food. That is also a primary source of carbon dioxide and methane when it gets to landfill. So, but in that sense, we're certainly not suggesting draconian fines for residents. I think, there's a little bit another one of a straw man argument thrown in there. We would propose, and obviously the review will pick up on this, incentivising and positive measures to get people to do the right thing rather than hitting them with a big stick if they do the wrong thing. Fully agree with what he said, though, about the Environment Act details. We need those. They've been a long time coming, and when we do have them, we'll have more specifics to go on. And finally, in response to what Councillor Wenny-Schmidt said, we need specific measures. We certainly do, but I think that needs to be in the context of two strands. One is what we can do here in the district and in Essex to improve recycling, but the second thing is with an eye to what is happening at the national level, because if the trends are going fairly well in the right direction, not fast enough for some of us, to reduce non-recyclable packaging and to reduce the input of materials which are difficult to recycle. And I think looking ahead for another 8 years to the year 2030, that's the purpose of what we're suggesting, is we're looking ahead to what will hopefully be an improved environment at that time. And I hope all members can support the amended motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Rabbit. So I will now put the motion to the vote. Members, the motion as set out on the agenda, pages 5 and 6, has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please indicate. That is unanimous. Thank you, members. The motion is approved.
Chairman, on point of order, was that unanimous?
Okay, I'll ask any against.
As far as I could see across the chamber, it
Couldn't see the person sat behind Councillor Abbott. I didn't see that hand go up. Apologies if it did go up.
No, it was.
Then I apologise. Okay,
no,
thank
there was a few low hands, but they all did go up.
We have four sets of eyes looking at each side to make sure that all rows are covered. But now that it's been approved, we all love this council and we all know how hard the crews do work, and I think that education is the right way to go, and Councillor Schmidt and myself are actually going to see some school children to do some education, and I wonder whether there's a way of getting the comms department to perhaps change the message on what we send out and how we do it, because just looking at figures for myself, we were 107th, climbed to 100th, and we're now sitting at 120th out of 338 councils, so I'm sure there is scope there to try and regain that ground. Thank you, members. We'll now proceed to agenda item number 7, which is the motion by Councillor Charlie Dervish, which is congratulations to the England women's football team. So this motion is set out on pages 7 and 8 of the agenda, and before inviting Councillor Dervish to present her motion, I can confirm that no amendments have been received and the motion remains as published in the agenda. And as Councillor Dervish as the proposer and Councillor Wrench as the seconder are present, this item may proceed. Councillor Dervish, please can you formally move your motion, and please can I remind you that before you make your speech on your motion it must be seconded.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Dervish. Councillor Wrench, you're recorded as the seconder of this motion. Please confirm that you second this motion, and do you wish to speak after Councillor Dervish or reserve your right?
Yes, I can confirm that I will second this motion and would like to speak straight after Councillor Dervish. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wrench. So, members, the motion has been formally moved and seconded by Councillor Dervish and Councillor Wrench. I will now invite Councillor Dervish to make her speech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to thank the public speaker this evening on this motion from the Turling Cricket Club. I think Mr. Harrison has highlighted exceptionally well some of the challenges which local clubs face in order to enhance their facilities and coaching to accommodate women in sport. I would also like to thank those from the ladies' team who attended this evening. Thank you. This council congratulates the women's football team on winning the European Championship 2022. In addition to acknowledging their success on the field, the council believes that this leads the way for all women in sport and inspires our young ladies to take up a sport that very much was male-dominated until of late. The Lionesses have proven to also unite us as a nation and have poured in record support with national and local women's grassroots football. This was shown in the full stadium at the Arsenal-Tottenham game and to witness their win in the friendly against the USA. We have also seen an amazing win in the England ladies rugby. To further support that success, this council agrees to promote and encourage women's participation in all sporting activity across the district. The girls brought it home. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dervish. And Councillor Wrench, you wish to speak next.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm delighted to be able to second this motion this evening. The achievements of the national team, the female national team, were absolutely remarkable. I'd like to speak about this on a local level, and Braintree Primary Schools have provided a platform for girls for many years, which I'm pleased has continued throughout this year. 7 schools have entered M&E League, which gives a space for these children to be able to thrive in sports. Great Bradford's FC, a Braintree-based local club, have 6 female teams, a ladies' team and 2 under-18 squads, who have been established for a few seasons. However, since the success in the summer, they have been inundated with requests for more children, particularly young girls, to join their club, and have established 3 youth teams and have started in the last couple of months. The Lionesses have clearly inspired the nation, and for this reason, their achievements must be recognised. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wrench. Do any other members wish to speak? Councillor Tattersley.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I strongly support this motion. I'm sorry for my rather stumbling response that I gave to you in your question, which was really well made, I thought. I just want to make a comment about women and girls sport in general in the district. When the contract for managing the council's leisure facilities was awarded to Fusion, a key contract condition that the facilities should support communities and underrepresented groups. I believe that in partnership with Fusion we've been quite successful in that ambition, with several clubs and organisations across the district, more than you'd probably think, specifically catering for girls and women's football. And we look to continue to grow this over the coming years. And we have a vision for that every girl has equal access to football in school by 2024. And to try and achieve that, we're focusing on 5 main areas: more girls being physically active with improved well-being, embedding girls' football in secondary schools, collaboration with existing football providers, making the game more inclusive, and growing the women's and girls' football workforce. And of course, it's not just women's football that we're looking to promote and provide, it's women and girls' participation in general. For example, there are currently 27,000 visits to the leisure centres per month by women over 16 years. We have 250 classes available each week for group exercises, which, whilst they're not exclusive for women, the people attending, 95 of those are by women, and we hold those in early morning, mid-morning, evenings and weekends to make sure that the women have got access to these at all times. So I strongly support it and commend this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Tatterley. Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and I just wanted to thank Councillor Dervish for bringing forward the motion this evening. We did discuss it in the Green and Independent group and agreed that we fully support the motion this evening. I mean, the girls certainly did bring it home and a complete inspiration, and I will remember on the evening following the game that there was a call from the Hedinghams Football Club for more girls to come down and train at the club, and the club supports children from all around the district, and I just think that, you know, moments like that are a true inspirational sort of feeling, and I'm just so glad that Councillor Dervish has kind of kept that moving this evening, and hopefully we can bring it back more local. So thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beavis. Councillor Euston.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a brief statement. Can we borrow the women's coach with the World Cup approaching? I think we're going to need all the help we can get. Thank you.
Yeah, you're quite right, because the England women's game on Friday evening was the fastest ever sellout from either the men's or the women's game, and they beat them 2-1, which is the current world champions. So the girls really are bringing it home, aren't they? Councillor Rose, I believe you okay?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would totally support the motion put forward by Councillor Dervish. I've, last year or so, become a great fan of women's football. I've watched football pretty much and played football pretty much all my life. But I really was taken aback with the quality that the women's teams display. But if I could just widen it out just a bit, Chairman, is that in the district there are a lot of young people, and I'm talking boys and girls, that play football, who don't get any funding at all. For instance, my great-grandson plays, and Councillor mentioned the Great Bradfords, has actually played against that team at their level. He's 8, he'll be the grand old age of 9 on Saturday. But the problem is with them, their kit is about £130 to kit them out. You get 2 little boys, plus his sister, you know, they don't wear it out, they grow out of it. An 8-year-old suddenly becomes 10-year-old, it doesn't fit. The boots don't fit, the socks don't fit, the shirts don't fit. And put it in perspective, when you get the Football Association, do not roll this money down to grassroots football. When you get a team like Man City paying their new player £900,000 a week, which is £46 million a year, as good as he may be, that money doesn't filter down to grassroots level. It's difficult for this as an authority to do that, but we do support these teams in our way. But I think the actual Football Association have really got to sit down and work out, are we going to support women's football? Because there are some brilliant players out there, but they may not get the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Absolutely delighted to put my name behind this motion this evening. I just want to touch on a couple of points that have been made this evening, and that is one of funding. So to Mr Harrison, when he mentioned it in his speech during public question time, there is a way to help with grassroots fundings, and that is through the Council Community Grant Scheme. It's an absolutely on-point way to start off a football club. Councillor Wrench mentioned that there was increased interest with clubs just starting off, and each of us councillors has £1,250 to support ventures just like this. If ever there was a more worthy cause to donate to, then this is it. Speak to your local councillor, Mr Harrison. I'm sure we'd be delighted to help with some funding towards your scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Yes, fantastic achievement by the women's football team. I just want to also pick up some of the points made by Mr Harrison in his speech, which basically made the same points I was going to make, which is that not just football that women are really achieving in, but women's rugby and women's cricket, women's tennis, and I think it really is inspiring a generation of young women to get involved, or women and girls to get more involved in sport. Just also like to thank people like Mr. Harrison for giving up so much of their time to develop sport for young people. They do it completely for free and out of the love of the sport, and without people like them, it wouldn't happen. So I'm certainly grateful to them. I'd like to also pick up Councillor Ritchie's point about the council grant scheme. I know that Councillor Scattergood gave a sum of money to Guessingthorpe Cricket Club for a new scoreboard, which is being used right the way throughout the season. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Any other members wish to speak? Councillor Schmidt.
Thank you, Chairman. I was absolutely riveted to the television watching the Lionesses, and I've realised how envious I am of the opportunities for young women today. And it brought back memories for me. Memories of the time my friend Val Sargent and I were playing football in the avenue that we lived in. There were no cars about in those days, so it was an easy thing to do. But further up the avenue was a police house. And to this day, I can still see the police car coming down with the sergeant in. And he stopped, and the finger went. Now, I had always been told what would happen to me if I ever got in trouble with the police. So we went over in absolute terror. And what did the sergeant say to us? Were we told off for playing football in the street? No, that was okay. We were told girls shouldn't be playing football. And I've never forgotten that because I loved playing football. Though something good did happen in the house opposite us. The family owned a local business, and we were playing football on their lawn, as we did, because we didn't dare do it in the street so much. And my only claim to fame is that someone who was working for them I played football with, and that was Jimmy Greaves. And so, as I said, I envy the young women of today and will do everything possible to support them because, yes, we're good, very, very good, and we don't foul and cheat either, which is even better.
Councillor Kilmartin.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'd like to follow on with the memories, if I may, from Councillor Schmidt. I would heartily support this motion, and I'm very pleased for the publicity it is giving to women and girls' sport. But I would like to tell everybody, and I'm sure there's others in here who will recognise this fact, I was taught cricket in the 1950s. Rounders, hockey, tennis, running. What happened to it all? I know what's happened to it all, and I'm sure a lot of other people do. But I'm very pleased for the new publicity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kilmartin. And as we've no other members indicating, so I'll now invite Councillor Dervish, as the proposer of the motion, to close the debate. And please can I remind you that you should confine your reply to the previous speeches and you should not introduce any new items. Councillor Dervish.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to come back on a few comments, if I may. Firstly, thank you so much for your support on this motion and the kind comments many of the councillors have given tonight. I'd just like to pick up on Councillor Tattersley's comment regarding Fusion and that they encourage open this up for more sporting facilities. We would like to see that not just for football but for all sports, obviously including ladies cricket, along with many others. So I'd welcome further discussions with Mr. Tattersley regarding Councillor Tattersley regarding that. Also, just picking up regarding comment Mr. Tattersley made, Councillor Rose and Councillor Ritchie regarding funding. Yes, indeed, there is obviously my councillor grant available, but this doesn't even touch the edges of what our local clubs need. So We'd like to see further funding available where possible. I'd also like to echo Councillor Parker's comments and the appreciation to Mr Harrison and all those like him who give up so much of their spare time and absolutely dedicated to the cause. A huge big thank you. And also my comments to Councillor Kilmartin. You are very welcome at the Turning Ladies Cricket Club anytime. I hated it. Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Dervish. Once again, we've got a few smiles. So we'll now put this to the vote. Members, the motion as set out in the agenda has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please indicate. No, you can't have two votes. I think we can safely say that one's unanimous. Councillor Buckland, you concur? Knew that would come up then, right? So, thank you, members. We will now deal with agenda item 8, which is councillor absence dispensation. Members, the report for this item is set out on pages 9 to 10 of the agenda. And before we proceed, I must advise that there's an error in the report when published, and this has been corrected. Councillor White is referred to as Councillor David White. This, of course, should be Councillor Darren White. Please can I invite Councillor Buckland to introduce the report and move the recommendation. And please can I remind you that before you make your speech, your recommendation must be moved and seconded. Councillor Buckland.
I formally move the recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Buckland. Councillor Buckland has moved the recommendations set out in the report. Please can I have a second?
Mr Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
Yes, please.
So I'll now invite Councillor Buckland to speak on this matter.
Thank you, Chairman. I think as a council, we're very proud of the attendance that we have from all members across the whole chamber. Just occasionally, a member comes close to being barred through non-attendance as a result, not of their own choosing, but on health issues. And we have in previous years, and there are 2 members in the chamber who have, in years gone by, been subject to a similar dispensation whilst they tackled particular illnesses. Chairman, since April, which was the last time that Councillor White attended, I have kept in touch with him both by telephone and personal visits, and I know also that his ward councillor, Councillor Charlie Dervish, has also been there, and a member of governance has also visited Councillor White. It is fair to say, and I don't want to breach any confidences about the health situation, but he is suffering severe mobility issues which are affecting his ability to be able to attend meetings. And I would ask that Council agree to approve a dispensation by a reason of illness to Councillor White for a 6-month period commencing on the 10th of October so that we avoid Councillor White ceasing to be a member of the Council under Section 85 of the Local Government Act. As I say, we have done this, to my knowledge, in 20 years, only twice before, and so I don't think it's a case of abusing that for any particular reason. I can assure you, Chairman, and members of the Council that I believe this is a very genuine health reason to grant the dispensation, and I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Buckland. Do any members wish to speak on this item? No. As no one wishes to speak on this item, Councillor Tom Cunningham, as you...
Nothing to add, thank you, Mr Chairman.
Thank you. So, Councillor Buckland, anything to add to close? So, we're going to whiz through this pretty quick. So, the recommendation set out on page 9 on the agenda has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please indicate. Thank you, members. That again is unanimous. list on those second votes. So the recommendation has been approved. We'll now deal with agenda item 9, Recycling Strategy Year 1. Members, this item is set out on pages 11 to 57 of the agenda. And can I invite Councillor Ritchie, Cabinet Member for Communities, to introduce the report and move the recommendations. Please can I remind you that before you make your speech, your recommendations must be seconded.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure in reporting on this report this evening. The recommendations set out in point 2, I so move. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Ritchie has moved the recommendations as set out on page 11 of the agenda. Can we have a seconder? Councillor Tattersley, thank you. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, Councillor Ritchie, if you'd like to introduce the item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The cycling strategy was adopted in September 2021, accompanied by the draft implementation plan. The report submitted gives an overview of the work that has taken place over the last year, giving you details on activity progression, data evaluation and communications. You will note that the last year has been a series of quick wins which have been achievable with the resources and budget available. We have established good working partnership working with local cycling hubs, which resulted in successful grant applications being received from 3 cycle groups, established relationships with cycle retailers who are now offering discounts to residents, discussed integrated active transport opportunities with Greater Anglia, promoted active travel plans to schools and businesses, and worked closely with colleagues in Essex County Council. Additionally, the work to date would have not been possible without the valuable input of the steering group, and I'd like to thank Councillor Mann, Councillor Mrs Jackie Pell and Councillor Abbott for their continued support on that steering group. The production of a range of cycle maps of the district has been a great step forward in promoting routes for both families and leisure cyclists. There are now 10 routes available on the Visit Braintree website and in paper format. These are free at tourist sites such as information points and railway stations. The communication report illustrates the different initiatives and opportunities there are for businesses, residents and visitors to support our cycling strategy and make these changes to their everyday lives. It should be noted there are a number of red rag status areas on the reports, which relates to the production of the local cycling and walking infrastructure plans. These plans are currently in contract negotiation and will be starting imminently. It doesn't mean to say they won't be starting at all. This strategy is a living document and we are committed to facilitating its growth. We still face challenges in persuading more residents that cycling can be a part of their lives. So within this strategy, we are addressing the barriers to this wider participation, which will help meet our transport and health priorities. I am confident that this document will help the district attract funding improvements as it gives us the benefit of a clearly defined framework. The report confirms our commitment to continue to work with residents, neighbourhoods, businesses and other public bodies and campaigning organisations to make a further step change in the number of cyclists with better connected network of safer routes. The cycling strategy is a document that shows how BDC will be encouraging active travel for making cycling an easy option for people to use for local journeys. Cycling is cheap, it's healthy and a pollution-free way for people to get around the district, and we want to make the local transport network as safe and convenient for cycling as possible. There are 3 recommendations in the report this evening, Mr Chairman. I will quickly read those out. One is to approve the targets met for the cycling strategy and implementation plan, to approve the draft implementation plan for 2022, and to agree that an annual cycling report is produced. I so move. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Do any members wish to speak on this item? Councillor Walsh.
Shall I speak now? Thank you, Mr Chairman. And first of all, I'd like to, as I mentioned, I'm both a cyclist and I regularly go to the meetings of Earlscote to Kelvedon Plus Cycling Group. I particularly want to speak supportively and maybe with a little bit of a constructive challenge, but I think this is a great initiative and it shows what can be done when we work across the aisle. And I think it's very timely, and perhaps one of the, I hate to say this phrase, perhaps one of the benefits of COVID was that we saw that there was more potential here. And if we remember that I think most journeys
in almost all areas are less than 4 miles. It might be less than 3 miles. So I think my main point is I wonder what the council might do to further prioritise taking up even more cycling routes, village to town, cross country, and village to village. I think the report indicates 4 new rural routes by 2030. I wonder if we might go a bit further. And as Councillor Ricky said, and in slightly different words, given the length of most journeys, there are health, environmental, and now cost of living benefits. This may seem a small point, and I don't mean it to be pedantic, but our planning horizon, as we all know, is to 2033. I think on cycling it's to 2030. I wonder if there's any advantage in them being the same deadline. And finally, I'm also, like many of us who cycle, I'm also a car driver. I think there are still times in which there's bad behaviour on both sides. I didn't see, and forgive me if I missed it, but I didn't see any emphasis in the report on what can we do to improve driver behaviour. I know there's been a slight tweak to the highway code, so I think it's a fantastic initiative, but possibly we can stretch it a little bit. But I would like to thank you and all councillors, especially those on the strategy group, for their work in this area.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Courtauld.
Thank you. I'd just like to applaud the cycling strategy and the progress made so far, and approve the draft implementation plan. In the table of 5 actions, the third, safer cycling, jumped out at me. When I started cycling to my London train 5 years ago, I was so terrified by the cars and lorries on the B1124 between Earlscone and the A120 that I nearly gave up on the first day, particularly in the dark or in bad weather. And sometimes when facing oncoming groups of other cyclists, I occasionally had to dive into the ditch. I gave up on Kelvin Station completely in a week and had to resort to the far less convenient Chapel and Wakes Cone railway station instead. The journey to London from which requires a time-consuming change at Marks Tay. I also had my saddle stolen on the first day there, and bicycling 7 miles with no saddle on the return journey, I can tell you, was terrifying. Nevertheless, though I have yet to attain the perfect physique, I am certainly much fitter, have saved some money in parking and petrol, and savour my soothing morning and evening bicycle rides through some of the most beautiful countryside in East Anglia. I know the completion of the proposed cycleway from Earlscone to Coggeshall will persuade, in due course, literally hundreds to leave their cars at home and take to their bikes on their regular commutes. The savings they will make and the landscape of the route will be important, but the key requirement is safety. My main point, however, is that this initiative is a very good thing, and I congratulate Councillor Ritchie and all those involved on their progress and their ambition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Courtauld. Councillor Everard? No? Councillor Abbott, then?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I too welcome the report and the detailed and comprehensive approach, and also thank Councillor Ricky for his chairmanship of the cycling group, of which I'm a member, which meets regularly and is making good progress. But I do feel, as an authority and working with our partners such as Essex County Council, we need to accelerate. That could be pedal faster or change gears or both, on the key strategic issues to deliver more safe cycling routes in Braintree District. It is, of course, inevitable that delivery takes time. It needs to be planned, it needs to be funded, permissions gained, etc. But it can be painfully slow, and I'd like to give a few examples of that. On page 24 of the report, it says in 2021 there is one quiet lane. I believe that remains Rectory Lane in Rivenhall, which we strongly supported locally and which was eventually delivered. The report also says there are 12 more quiet lanes in progress, but some of them were submitted years ago, and I know that because it was a time when I was on the local highway panel, and one of them I submitted myself, Sheepcoats Lane. So it appears to take years and years and years just to progress quiet lanes, which, as I'm sure members know, are designed to be places where people who walk, cycle, horse ride have priority. And yet, what do we need to do to get a quiet lane? Well, we need to survey it, obviously, to make sure it's suitable. But we don't need to make physical changes. Often it's just a question of the regulatory change and putting some signs up. And yet it seems to take years and years to get these things moving forward. The report also says, and I do accept, of course, this is a year one report, there's been zero delivery on new cycleways in large housing developments, so over 100, and zero delivery on new urban routes or rural routes. Now, I hope, obviously, again, accepting this is year one, we can move quite quickly on that. And one of the things, as Councillor Ricky knows, I keep banging the drum for is this idea of connecting up our larger villages and towns. Personal examples have been given by some members. I'll give a couple more. If you want to cycle from Cresting or Silver End to Whittam, where the mainline railway station is, significant leisure facilities, employment estates, and leisure, school, etc., you either have to go down the B1018 or you have to take the road through near where I live, and in either case you are risking your life as a cyclist. There's no other way of putting it. It's an incredibly intimidating environment with fast-moving, high-volume traffic and HGVs. So those are the type of areas where we need to be moving as quickly as we can to safe off-road routes. And for a keen cyclist, you're talking minutes to get into town from those villages. You're not talking half an hour, you're talking 5, 10, 15 minutes. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. As I say, there's a lot of positives in the report. But another potentially controversial, but I'm going to say it, area on this is how we balance our funding and priorities. The A12 and the A120 projects on their own are £2 billion worth of transport spend. Now, I'm not saying right now I'm going to argue the merits or demerits of those, but compare that to the amount of money we're putting into walking and cycling. I just think we need to look at rebalancing. There are some projects, and I think it's, we have to welcome those that are moving forward, such as the Braintree Town, and of course the excellent EC2K, which has relied extensively on a number of individuals who've done fantastic work in moving that forward and in gaining funding, and has already been referred to this evening. But for me, I think that the word which is in the report, and other members have mentioned, which we have to look at most carefully, is safety. If we can provide safe routes for walkers and cyclists, they will use them. There's no doubt about that. If we look at any other comparative countries in Europe, you get what this clumsy phrase, modal shift, people shifting from one type of transport to another. And if we do that, we can have an actual benefit for all those things we want to keep spending money on, the roads, in that we'll have less traffic, we'll have better air quality, and it'll support a greener economy going forward. So I think there's so many good aspects to this. My only plea would be that we need to move a bit quicker if we can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Any other members wish to speak? Councillor Tattersley, as the seconder of the motion, you haven't spoken. Do you wish to speak now?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to support this strategy. I do know and recognise that a number of existing roads are not ideal for cycling, and having tried to cycle between Finchingfield and Great Bardfield, I agree that you really wouldn't want to do it very often because you do take your life into your own hands. But the working group has recognised that and have concentrated initially promoting those routes that can be safely cycled, but also to set the groundwork for new routes as and where the opportunity and finances allow. The County Council, supported by the county member and the parish council, persuaded the County Council to build a cycleway between the centre of Great Bardfield and the Blue Egg, about 2 miles. It's very, very popular. It's a good place to. It's a good place to. It's a good route to walk on. Plenty of slows if anybody still does that. And it's across fields with the agreement of the various farmers and stuff on that. And of course, representing the 3 field wards as I do, which features heavily in the Tour de France and attracts dozens, if not hundreds, of cyclists. Very many famous and recognised and professional cyclists use this route, often staying at the Blue Egg, again in Great Bardfield, to have a cup of tea or whatever cyclists have when when they look as worn out as what they do when they finally get there. I know how popular cycling is now. It is increasingly popular in the Three Fields area. It's not just the Lycra professional fast cyclists that are using the routes. Now we're getting a lot more children and families using these, and I would commend that. It's a good exercise for people of all groups, and I wish this cycling strategy all the best success, and I'll support it in any way that I can.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. Councillor Ritchie is the proposer of the recommendations. Would you like to reply to the speeches before I put the recommendation to the vote? Please do not introduce any new matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to come back on a few points made this evening, thank you for those of you who did comments. Firstly, for Councillor Walsh, of course, connectivity is part of our wider plan and part of our aspiration. I think you only need to look at some of the work that's been done by Peter Cohn in the EC to Kelvedon route, backed by £20,000 of LHP funding to really push that forward now. It's getting some traction. Obviously, a blended mix of going across private land and publicly owned land, so hurdles to overcome there. But I think that grant of £20,000 for LHP shows that there's some serious support behind making that work. So I'm sure if that comes to fruition, it starts to show how a concept of connectivity between towns and villages really starts to work. And we will support that as part of the wider plan. Of course, you mentioned the highway code, or the change recently on the highway code, giving more bias to not just cyclists, but horse riders, pedestrians, etc. And we did actually, we pushed that on our social media channels, on the Visit Braintree social media channels. And of course, we will factor that into the safety message as part of our plan too. The planning question, I'm not too sure of. If it's okay with you, I'll take that one away and get back to you, if that's okay with regards to the co-terminus of the years. I will check that and see what happens there. Councillor Courtauld, thank you for your comments. Again, it shows that cycling is a vital means of transport across various socio-economical sways. Maybe the cost of living might inspire some people to make that change, not through deprivation, but through making some serious choices around what mode of transport they wish to use. We will see. And finally, Councillor Abbott, I'd love to deliver this in the next 3 years, but I think we just need to like I said, take this at a bit of pace, take stock of what we are delivering, see what's working well, and see where we can improve. As you quite rightly mentioned, planning and funding, I think, are not so much the anchors that are holding us back, but obviously we need to make sure that we've got those in the right order so that we can deliver sustainably across any cycling networks that we want to deliver. Quiet lanes, certainly all 4 quiet lanes, and I think there's more than one in the district. I think there's maybe 2 or 3, but absolutely, if there's 12 that's been in the planning phase, we need to kind of push Essex, bearing in mind that Essex are looking at a county-wide a receipt of people wanting to initiate quiet lanes within the rural areas. You mentioned about planning as well and how that links into the cycling strategy with Panfield development that was agreed by the planning committee about 4 or 5 months ago. Had a cycling scheme linked to it, which linked up to the roads around the back of Panfield, and we will continue to push that with our planning teams as well. The adoption of the local plan also gives us some direction around the sustainable preferred method of transports for any developments too. Yeah, thank you all for your comments, and yeah, once again, happy to approve or to whatever it is, I've forgotten the word now. Move. Thank you, Councillor Sassy. Move the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. So, as you say, the recommendations set out on page 11 of the agenda have been moved and seconded. So, all those in favour, please indicate. And that's yet another unanimous. Thank you, members. Well, the recommendations are approved. We'll now proceed to agenda item 10 to receive the response of the Combined Scrutiny Committee into the Cost of Living Crisis 2022. Members, this item is set out on pages 58 to 80 of the agenda, and unusually it's going from the top table, so please can I invite Councillor Mrs Garrett as Chairman of the Combined Scrutiny Committee to introduce the report.
Need another microphone.
Thank you, Chairman. The Combined Scrutiny Committee, comprising of the Community Development and Partnership Development Groups committees, was established in response to a motion that was submitted by Mrs Councillor Beavis on the cost of living crisis, which had been approved at the meeting held on the 20th of June this year. Households and businesses appear to be facing a very difficult winter. Soaring cost of energy and mortgage rates, the pound has slumped and food is rocketing, to name but a few. This council wants to offer meaningful support to residents of the Braintree district, particularly for those in greatest need, ensuring they are able to access the help they will need to see them through these difficult times. As per the meeting, the motion, we held two meetings, 8th of August and 5th of September. And this was during a time of uncertainty when we were electing a new Prime Minister. The review, the terms of reference were to review the measures that the Council and its partners in Essex are already offering residents, and to recommend any further assistance that the Council could deliver during the current financial year in order to support the district's residents further. We first spoke to Mr Walker from Essex County Council. He discussed the numbers of households experience acute financial pressure, applications and successful payment for the Essential Living Fund, and sadly in Braintree the elderly are particularly at risk of fuel poverty. Many of the levers in addressing the cost of living crisis are national policy levers such as tax and benefits systems, regulation, market intervention and government support packages such as the energy package which has been put together. And Essex County Council has announced a £50 million package of support aimed at helping people with the rising cost of living, and their plan includes £17 million of government money to help pay for insulation. We also discussed the research undertaken by officers on the Fuel, Child and Poverty report, which was done in 2021. And on the second meeting, we saw Rachel Fahy from the Citizens Advice Bureau. We also talked about the Don't Wait for Winter campaign, discretionary housing payments, and the exceptional hardship provision. Rachel Fahy was very helpful. She gave us a cost of living data dashboard, which we were able to look at, and that was really very useful indeed. And at the end of the sessions, a number of the committee members recommended that the Council's response to the cost of living crisis is proactive, comprehensive and well structured. The Council's work continues to evolve as new cost of living issues arise, and the Cost of Living Partnership was set up in a timely manner to target areas of high concern, such as fuel, wellbeing, winter resilience, encompassing Christmas, horizon scanning to map impacts and data information and intelligence. The committee made 22 recommendations, and I won't go through all of them. Recommendation 2 is for the Council to discuss the issue of prepayment meters with the local government authority, with a view to lobbying government to end this injustice and by bringing prepayment prices in line with direct debit prices. Recommendation 5, that the Council should explore ways in which we could work with partners for free PAT testing on electric blankets for those who are in particular need. Recommendation 7. The government's position on support is evolving with some measures already announced. However, the reality is that for most families this support barely covers the energy increases which have already occurred. It's recommended that the Council explore ways to work with partners, village halls and organisations to provide warm spaces for people to come together, preferably with activities and the supply of food and drink. The Council could explore the possibility of an allocation from the Shared Prosperity Fund during Year 1 and consider providing a contribution to some community assets such as the Braintree Museum, Town Hall and leisure facilities, thereby helping them with their energy costs too. Recommendation 13. It's recommended that the Council work with partners to promote advice for those who are struggling to keep their pets, particularly therapy and or working animals. For example, the RSPCA has introduced new guidance for worried pet owners to help them through the ongoing cost of living crisis. And furthermore, it's noted that the food banks are now offering food for pet owners, so your contributions there would also be gratefully received next time you're in the supermarket. Recommendation 18 is that the Council seeks a means by which it can promote and communicate the sharing of transport to common locations such as supermarket visits and friendship groups, where people can gather in homes via invitation with a view to sharing the costs associated with energy and heating and addressing social isolation. This suggestion was actually made by Rachel Fahy from Citizens Advice, and I think it's a very good one. Many people who have now been able to make ends meet will be pushed into poverty, and those who are already struggling will be pushed into desperation. Please look out for those who might be having a mental health crisis. Lots of information on Braintree District Council's website for people to look at, and there are a number of mental health charities. And I would say to residents, if you come across this, please speak to your district council if you're not able to find support elsewhere, and they will direct you because we are actually here to help residents. Finally, I'd like to give my thanks to Tom Walker from Essex County Council, Rachel Fahy, Citizens Advice, and for officers and colleagues who gave me a wealth of information. And particularly to Councillor Cunningham for her support as Vice Chairman, and to Councillor David Mann for his information on local charities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Mrs. Garrett. Do any members wish to speak on this item? Councillor McKee. If you'd like to start, carry on getting the hands in, because in the interest of time. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. I'd like to make comments actually on recommendations 10, 11 and 16. Recommendation 10, which is the discretionary housing payment fund to assist those most vulnerable. You've kind of conflated two things together, and I'll answer them kind of independently. First of all, the authority and the council recognise the issue of housing communities. So the housing communities officers are acutely aware of the need to monitor the situation with housing and housing costs. And we are ready and able to use discretionary powers to increase the DWP allocation to 2.5 times using BDC resources. But this will be kept under constant review by officers. And I remind everyone, this has only come about because the central government have reduced the amount of the DHP that we had last year, and it may well be reviewed, because it often does get reviewed in the mid-year, so there may be further allocations, but we don't rely on that. On the £1 million COVID-19 fund, which is in earmarked reserves, it's still maintained as an earmarked reserve until the total effect of the COVID-related costs are better understood and put into a containment. However, The MTFS and budget process will provide a view on the financial state of the authority, including pay awards, savings on services, settlement, etc., which will allow a better view of the best way to allocate that £1 million when we've got through that process at the back end, certainly after our strategy workshop, back end of this year. On 11, I recognise the desire for a 1% increase in council tax, and I'm sure many people in this chamber would echo that desire. However, we cannot set the council tax tonight until such time as the budget has been and the MTFS is reviewed through our normal process. So early 2023 is the time when we set our council tax. We recognise that council tax increases will be kept to a minimum, and we understand that residents are having a tough time. But I remind everyone, the council is also in the same market and economy that our residents are sitting, and this is likely to be a very tough year and a tough job balancing that budget. On item 16, on energy saving measures, we do continually keep under review the ways in which we can minimise our energy usage, and this is not just now, but we are more acutely aware of that right now. Furthermore, Finance are providing advice to residents and employees where grant funding is available, and I would encourage anyone that needs it, goes on the website. There's a whole bunch of advice to anybody who wants to take it, how they can actually access any funding available to help with energy costs. And we also act to help benefit claimants, and those on low incomes are also offered advice on how to cope with their energy costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKee. Councillor Mrs Mary Cunningham.
Thank you, Chairman. As Chair of the Partnership Development Committee, I'd like to acknowledge the amount of work that Councillor Mrs Garrett, Chairman of the Combined Scrutiny Group, has put into preparing the report, and I know that she's carried out significant research. And it's testament to the seriousness of the cost of living crisis that the joint committees, along with the officers, have given such commitment to carrying out the review and completing it within such a short time frame, and produced a report that is extremely comprehensive and informative in its detail. I think it was very apt that the review was carried out by both the Community Development Committee and also the Partnership Development Committee, as it's the volunteers and the authorities' partners who will be key in assisting residents in our communities who may be facing financial difficulty over the winter months and beyond. There are many community groups and volunteers who are working extremely hard to provide significant support. And as a Braintree Ward Councillor, I and other members have donated some of our community grant to a group called Baby Stuff. Baby Stuff provides baby equipment and clothing for parents who are suffering financial hardship. Our recent grant contributions have helped provide winter clothing for young children, which gives assurance to parents that their little ones can face the winter elements well clothed and warm. Having chaired the Partnership Development Scrutiny Group for a few years now, and throughout each review, it is always evident that one of the constant and important partners are ourselves as members. We will all need to play our part in signalling as much information as possible to those that need it most for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Cunningham. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I won't say too much because I'm mindful of the time, but just to acknowledge the process and the excellent chairmanship of the Joint Committee, which I think was a very quick and good process and very thorough. But quick is what I wanted to focus on. So worst case scenario is this winter we could face people who are not putting their heating on because they can't afford it. And I actually know a few people who still haven't put any heating on and are going to leave it to the last moment. But there may be others who simply don't at all because they can't afford it. We also may be facing a situation where there are power cuts. So I want to focus on recommendation 7, which is about a number of... It recognises the government is trying to help, that the situation is evolving, but also how we might be able to work with partners and village halls, etc., and provide a list, encouragement and a list of all those places which could be warm spaces. Can the committee chairman or cabinet members say whether that process has yet started, and if not, when it's going to, mindful that we're already in the middle of October? I'm aware, for example, through Councillor Hicks, that Whittam Town Council has already started looking at this, but I think what we need is a coordination across the whole district, so we have a big list of what's available. And furthermore, in terms of worst case scenario, could we have some of those places strategically located which are also available at night? Because it has struck a number of us that it's great having warm spaces during the day where people go and have a cup of tea and warm up, but then what's happening if we're sending them back home at night to a cold home, which they can't heat because they can't afford it? So for me, that's sort of, I'm hoping this worst case scenario doesn't happen, but for me, that's sort of the elephant in the room, is how we actually physically help residents in a worst case scenario. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'd also like to acknowledge this excellent and very detailed report. I think, as representing a very rural ward, I think for residents in my ward and wards like mine, I think the two of the key issues are the price of petrol and diesel. A lot of people who work in the more rural areas often have their own businesses, rely on their vans and their cars to get to work. So it is a significant chunk out of their earnings. And the other thing is that nearly, I should think, every single house in my ward is off the gas grid, and so relying on heating oil, which is not subject to a price cap. I've just checked the current price of heating oil for delivery to my house is just around about 94p per litre, which for my tank of fuel would be £1,000, which is double what it was last year. And I wonder whether one of the things we could do, I noticed there was an helpful email from the Essex Rural Partnership Central Councillors recently referring to a scheme by the Essex RCC, Rural Community Council of Essex, if I got that acronym correct, talking about community oil buying schemes and whether those are something that the council would like to try to promote. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Walsh, would you indicate? Councillor Beavis, did you indicate? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to thank Councillor Garrod for all of your work, which I have been looking at, and that of your committee members as well. I mean, look, I was really concerned in June when I brought the motion forward, and I was really delighted of council support. But if I was worried then, I'm seriously worried now and deeply concerned about this. And I just wonder what immediate action that this council can move forward with this cost of living motion to support the elderly of our district. And I'm aware, in fact really disturbed actually, at social workers in the ward that I represent using their already depleted salary to buy blankets for the elderly because they're not keeping warm at night and they're not turning on their heating. And quite frankly, in my lifetime, I've never known a period like this. You know, to come out of the back of COVID, now into this, and clearly also on the back of the the war as well. And local communities work so hard at raising money and bringing communities together to support that effort. But I just feel that to have the elderly of our district not putting their heating on at night, struggling in the cold, is completely unacceptable. And I think also we have to remember, because of COVID, that pubs and clubs are closing. They can't afford to heat their premises. So actually, the spaces that people can go to are also depleting. And I can iterate again that I am seriously concerned about this, and I just hope that there's more that we can do immediately to help the elderly, particularly in our district. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beavis. Councillor Schmee.
Thank you, Chair. I think a lot of my colleagues have made some very good comments already about this report, but I would congratulate basically Braintree District Council and certainly the Chair and the councillors and officers involved in putting this very important report together and the recommendations contained in it. Because what's really important here is that actually we've also got a lot of world influence that is affecting our cost of living crisis. That we obviously can't control. But the result of this, I think it's really important to note that the amount of collaboration that is going on, and this has been a very agile committee that's come up with some recommendations very quickly, and I think that response reflects well for our residents and our businesses. And the important is to really communicate signposts and make this knowledge available to everybody across the district, but also to keep that information current, which I'm sure will happen. But as has been said, I think it's a good overall report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schwer. Councillor Euston.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm also impressed by the report and the speed at which it's being put together. There are a couple of things I wanted to raise. One was recommendation 3 about different forms of communication apart from digital and social media. You know, there are a lot of areas in my patch where signal isn't that great and is very variable, and sometimes you can get social media, sometimes you can get mobile phone signals, sometimes you can't. So an alternative way is good. We have village magazines that I'm asked to write for each month, and I write about the level of information that's available on the Braintree website, but it would help me tremendously if there was actually leaflets that I could distribute through the parish councils. The other thing was to catch up with Councillor Parker. I also live in an area where it's oil or electricity. The old phrase is there's a rock or a hard place, isn't it, really, with oil or electricity? But there are community oil buying syndicates already operating, and they do help to significantly reduce the cost. And it might only be by 3 or 4 pence a litre, but if you're ordering 500 or 1,000 litres, that all helps. The last thing, really, which I think might be a possible quick win, is last winter I did a walkabout with Essex Police in Rain, and at the end of that walkabout we were given bags issued by the police that had in it blankets, thermos flasks, hand warmers, and various other useful activities to help rough sleepers keep warm. And it occurs to me that if they are still doing such a scheme, could we not use that, extend that to people who are elderly and are struggling with their heating bills? Because the blankets were very good and the flasks were very good, and all of the contents, and it also had a leaflet inside that listed places where you could get help. And if Essex Police have that still, then could that not be expanded to beyond rough sleepers? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes and Councillor Costina.
Thank you, Chairman. I also support the very detailed report produced by Councillor Diana Garrod and the detailed recommendations made. I would like to take a look at recommendations 15, which talks about working with partners. A key partner is our churches that are doing a great job in these hard times. Indeed, churches are also going through a hard time due to its dwindling members. But as a member of Witham Methodist Church, I hear the church leaders talk about how we can support people in these tough winter times. Every Sunday, after a good church service, the church provides tea and coffee, which everyone is invited to. Secondly, what the church is looking at is also creating warm places this winter for people who want to come in and stop by and also have a good cup of coffee.
Thirdly, the church is carrying a touch base scheme with elderly members of the church and also those who've passed through the church and who have not come back. In this regard, I think the church are a great partner and councils should be looking at them to partner with during this winter time. But in sum, I'll say the recommendations are very clear and signposted and a good support for the community during these winter times. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corsino. Councillor Kilmartin.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's not going to be quite so bad as Councillor Beavis is painting. I like to think it won't be so bad. In Witham Central Ward, we are lucky to have a lot of places that are already gearing up for such events as keeping warm. And only this morning, I filled out one of my councillor grants for the Essex Knitters and Stitchers, who are going to knit hot water bottle covers and gloves and hats and the like, and distribute them in the places that will be open for warmth. Witham Central Ward has a lot of places, and we have, in Witham Lunch Club, for instance, we have meals, we have card games, we have coffee mornings, and a good eye will be kept on everybody. And finally, I should say that the current level of the elderly in our communities were the ones who've never had central heating. They know how to live with this sort of catastrophe, and they will make sure they have good meals, and they will make sure that they have appropriate clothing and heating where possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kilmartin. Any other members? Oh yes, Councillor Santamora.
Thank you, Chairman. I echo much of what has been said about the report and thank everyone for their efforts involved. As has already been mentioned, signalling is going to be really important through the coming months and the ongoing cost of living crisis. But it's not just down to us. We need to appeal to the greater public at large to sort of be our eyes and ears, really. It won't always be apparent. People won't always ask for help. As I say, we just need to be really vigilant to that. I recently was in a shop and someone was asking me about the contents of my basket. It was nominal things, mostly for the dog. And in that moment, I realised that actually they didn't have the opportunity to feed their pet at the time. And so from my basket, afterwards, I would donate some things and just offered a bit of just warmth and kindness. But it's going to be important. I don't think it's going to go away, and it is a worry. So if we are good at signalling, that's great. But if we're also vigilant and encourage everyone to be vigilant to signs of those that might not ask or know where to look. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Santamora. Councillor Buckland.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's been an excellent debate. Can I first of all add my thanks to Councillor Mrs Goward for the report that this joint committee has produced and for the officers that supported her during that. It would be easy for us to say, well, that's done. You know, we produced a nice report. We'll just let other people get on and do it. I don't believe that that is something we should do, and I don't believe any member of this council would want us to do that. I just want, first of all, to just a slight word warning that we don't think that this is something just about the elderly. I suppose I'm elderly. I'm, in my 70s. I don't have a mortgage. I'm pretty likely to get a triple lock increase in my state pension. Even more, I'm probably likely to get something like a 10% increase in my inflation-linked public pension. That is far, far better than many other people will have, irrespective of their age. So I just want us to remember, we talk about the elderly. There are many elderly people who actually will not be doing this. Be quite blunt, they'll soon be off on their cruises. So it is about all people, particularly those with health issues, disabilities, and also young families with children. So I think we just must be careful that we don't typecast this as being a problem of the elderly. Undoubtedly, there are older people who will fall into this category, and we need to do it. And in many cases, some of them will be the most difficult to help. It's no good going to many elderly people and saying, you ought to come into the warm place because you're hard up. They will not respond to that. And it's also about not just bringing people in to sit down and have a cup of tea, it's about engaging them and doing things, etc. And this is, I think, a very good report, 22 recommendations. And I'm here thinking, well, that's fine, you know, the next council is December and maybe we'll... I am going to ask every cabinet member to go through these recommendations and within the next week to 10 days, give me anything in their portfolio that they believe could help the situation. I will also undertake to inform all members of the action we are taking in between council meetings. I think this is far too important to say, right, well, the next council meeting is the 12th of December and do it. So if members are happy, slightly unorthodox approach, but I just feel that, as members on both sides have said, and Councillor Abbott talked about the unthinkable, hopefully it won't be the unthinkable, but we have to be ready to do that. So that is what I would undertake to do. Some of the recommendations will be easier for us to support than others. Hopefully, of course, we will see in the next few weeks further announcements from central government as well. But I want us to be a council, collectively, this isn't a party political issue, collectively doing our best to support our residents through what will be a very difficult period. We need to work with partners. We need also to work, particularly through you, Chairman, issues that were raised about rural areas, etc. Very many parish and town councils are much closer to their local residents than even we as a district are. And we will want to help and encourage them. So there isn't a sort of recommendation. I'm just giving an undertaking that is what we will do as an administration, and that we will report back in between councils when we've got stuff. We'll do an initial report on each of these as to what we can do and what we can't, but also what we are planning to do. And it's fair to say that this isn't something which is just starting. There has been discussions going on by officers with partners, etc. But we need to update members on that. Some of the things about which particularly struck me, we've got a website, according to this, which actually is directing people in the wrong direction or where there isn't opportunities, etc. That doesn't take too much to put it. Doesn't cost a fortune. There's probably some easy wins here, but I do think there's a danger with these that we accept the report and think, well, that's done. Mr. Chairman, we will not do that, and I hope members will support. And if they have ideas as well, I don't think all the knowledge and expertise rests amongst the 9 members of Cabinet, then please don't hesitate to write to me directly so we can take that on board. I hope, Chairman, that the Council will believe that we are serious about this and that this is a way that we can move forward, which hopefully will be able to alleviate some. I don't think we can necessarily alleviate all, but some of the issues that are going to confront our residents over the next few months. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Butland, and I'm sure we can add to that the unparished members, because we don't have the parish councils, that we will engage once again with our community groups who stepped up valiantly last year with the county council's help. And if we combine our efforts across the district, I'm sure we can't wave a magic wand, but and I have Councillor Rose indicating.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree really with what the leader has just outlined. This is not something that's age related. It could be a young family with small children. It could be people of my age or above. But don't you think it's a sad indictment on our society that we're having to do this? There's an old adage that says, fail to prepare and you prepare to fail. Because they're now talking about bringing oil ashore from the southern North Sea. Well, that will take 10 years. Don't you think this should have been looked at 20 years ago as a measure to keep in the back pocket, rather than rely on somebody from Eastern Europe who is at the best unpredictable or volatile? And I just think it's a sad indictment that we have to go around looking to try and get people to keep them warm. It really is terrible. But as I say, we should have prepared for this as a nation 10 years ago, and just in case it happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Any other members? Right, so it's going to be back to Councillor Garrett to reply to the speeches.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I won't reply to all of them because I don't think Councillor McKee requires a response. But thank him very much for his explanation of those financial implications. Councillor Abbott talked about recommendation 7. I'd just like to say that some community organisations have started with the warm rooms and spaces. So has the Museum Trust. Officers are engaging with a number of avenues in that direction. Our communities team is collating this list at the moment and working with Essex County Council, who are looking at what funding they can support it with. And if anyone is aware of any, please let our community teams know. Any warm spaces wanting to be had. I know that in Birdbrook, the community house is looking for funding, and I will be speaking to officers about that one this week. With regards to Councillor Beavis, yes, it's not just about elderly people, but we do have village agents, and I have spoken to some of them about this, and they are very proactive about what is happening within Essex County Council and how they can help people. And in conjunction with Councillor Euston's response about the winter packs that you were talking about, they are in fact arranged by Braintree Council together with Community 360. They have a winter resilience programme, and these bags that you were talking about are still available. And in recommendation 4, I've asked that some things can be added there, such as bed socks, for example, and possibly hot water bottles. But I think hot water bottles have been done before, but that's something that they're looking at again. But yes, it's already in there. Councillor Rose, yes, we all know that this is rooted in the war, the act of war from Russia. President Putin is poking us with a big stick. He wants to irritate us, and we have to invoke, to some degree, our wartime spirit. And if he wants to make us cold and create havoc within our community, then we have to stand up to that. And we will. We will work together and look after your neighbours, look after your residents, and help them as best you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Members, there is no decision required of this report. However, I would ask for members' agreement to refer the report to Cabinet, and as you've heard, they are certainly going to do something with it for their consideration of the recommendations contained therein, and to respond accordingly at the earliest opportunity. So please can you indicate your agreement by a show of hands? Thank you, members. We'll now proceed to item 11, the Treasury Management Annual Report 2021-2022. This item is set out on pages 81 to 91 of the agenda. Please can I invite Councillor McKee, Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Transformation, to introduce the report and move the recommendations. Please can I remind you that before you make your speech, your recommendations must be seconded.
I'll make the recommendation now, and this is to receive and note the Treasury Management Annual Report for 21-22.
Thank you. Can we have a second there? Thank you, Councillor Butland. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak? Thank you. So, Councillor McKee, if you'd like to speak on the matter.
First of all, you're pleased to know I'm not going to go into the detail of the report because, mindful of the time, I'm going to skip through it as fast as possible. Under the CIPRA Code, this Council is required to approve a Treasury management strategy prior to the commencement of the financial year, receive at least one mid-year report and then receive an annual report after the financial year end. The current strategy is detailed in Appendix J of the Council Budget and Council Tax 2022-23 and Medium-Term Financial Strategy 22-23 to 25-26 and contains the policy and practices for the authority governing the investments, cash flows, banking, money transfer, money market transactions, the effective control or risk associated with their activities, and to create an optimum financial performance within the acceptable risk profile. I will assume you've all read that report attached. Treasury Management Strategy for 21-22 was approved by full Council at its meeting held on the 22nd of February 2021. A mid-year report was presented to full Council on the 13th of December 2021. The annual report for 21-22 was reviewed at the Governance and Audit Scrutiny Committee at their meeting held on the 12th of July 22, where no changes were recommended. The recommendation is set out in the report and will help the Council demonstrate it's achieving its corporate objectives, being a recommendation made, and I've closed. Thank you.
Thank you for that very brief whistle-stop tour, Councillor McKee. Do any members wish to speak on this item? They all want to get home, look at that. So, therefore, Councillor Butland, do you wish to? No. So as no one wishes to speak on this item, I guess you'll have no reply, Councillor McKee. So I'll put the recommendations to the vote. The right point. So the recommendation is set out on page 81 of your agenda, which has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please indicate. Okay, thank you, members. That is unanimous. So we'll now proceed to agenda item 12, which is the award of a contract for the provision of the MHR iTrent system, and it is an urgent key decision. The report for this item is set out on pages 92 to 93 of the agenda. And members, before I invite Councillor Butland to introduce the report, please can I remind members that this evening we are asked to note the decision taken by the leader. There is no decision to be taken by full Council. Councillor Butland.
I formally move the recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. And do any members wish to speak? No second. It's only for noting. Do you want to introduce the report, Councillor Butland?
I think it's self-explanatory. Unless anybody has any questions, I wouldn't intend to go any further. It was all covered in accordance with our Constitution, and I so move that we note the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. So, members, we've been asked to note the report. Can we take it that the report has been noted? Okay. And we now proceed to agenda item 13, which is committee membership update. The report for this item is set out on pages 94 to 97 of the agenda, and we also have the addendum report for this item, which was published and circulated on the 7th of October 2022. Please can I invite Councillor Butland, the leader of the Council, to introduce the report and move the recommendations in both reports. And can I remind you that before you make your speech, this one must be moved and seconded.
I so move, Chairman.
Thank you. And can we have a seconder?
Seconded, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do you wish to reserve your right?
Yes, please.
So, Councillor Butland, if you'd like to.
Thank you, Chairman. Since our last meeting, there have been various changes as far as the Council is concerned. The first in August, Councillor Nick Unsworth gave notification to the monitoring officer that he was leaving the G&I group and was becoming a Green Party independent member or an independent Green Party independent member. At that stage, that changed potentially the allocation of seats, but there were two items which the Green Party itself was entitled still to have representation. One was the Climate Change Working Group, and in consultation with the leader, Councillor Abbott, was appointed to that. And as far as the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee was concerned, the nomination from the Green and Independent Group was that Councillor Mrs Beavis would fill that post. Subsequently, both now, that's why we have an amended paper, both the true independent members, if I can put it that way, have both resigned their seats, and as we all know, there will be by-elections pending on that. But at the moment, that does not affect the distribution of seats between the parties, although clearly after the elections there may be some readjustments that will need to be done. But so the main recommendation of this is to note the appointment of Councillor Abbott to the Climate Change Working Group and to approve the appointment of Councillor Mrs Beavis to the Performance Management Scrutiny Group. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Button. Does anybody wish to speak on this item? And Councillor Cunningham?
Nothing further to add.
Thank you. So, Councillor Butland's nothing to reply to. So we go on to. So the recommendations set out on page 94 of the agenda and page 1 of the addendum report have been moved and seconded. One for noting, one for voting. But we'll just take the vote as both items, one noted, if that makes sense. So all those in favour, please indicate. And again, that's unanimous. Thank you, members. The recommendation has been approved and Councillor Abbott been noted. And we finally get to agenda item 14, Cabinet's full report to full council. And before opening this item, I'll remind members that they may put up to 2 questions to the Cabinet, whether you want to or not, which will be responded to by the leader or the relevant Cabinet member. And Councillor Abbott, as the leader of the opposition, may put up to 4 questions to the Cabinet. Members may not ask supplementary questions, and questions should relate to the functions of the leader or a Cabinet member, the powers and the duties of the Council, or matters pertaining to the district. No statements may be made by councillors during this session. Where a response cannot be given during this meeting, a written answer will be issued within 10 working days of the meeting and circulated to members. And as you all know, a period of 1 hour is normally allowed for this item. However, with the time at 22:02, we've got 12 minutes and 18 seconds to go. So I'd be grateful for members' cooperation in being as concise as possible, and I would also recommend that members use the written question process, which enables you to get an answer which is also circulated to all members. So I will invite Councillor Butland as leader of the council to introduce the Cabinet report.
Chairman, to speed matters up, there will be no additional comments from members of the Cabinet to the report that's in front of members.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. So, does time allow for questions? Yes.
You've got 10 minutes.
Okay, I've got 11 minutes and 34 seconds counting down. So, Councillor Beavis. If other members can keep your hands up, we'll take you so that we can carry on. Okay. We'll stick over. Right.
Do you want to take James first?
Okay, we'll take James first then, as he gets his 4 questions.
Okay, I'll keep it as short as possible, Mr. Chairman, keep it to 3 questions this time round. In respect of the leader's report, firstly, can I welcome and support his words about support for Ukrainian refugees as the appalling war in Ukraine continues and the need to support people fleeing that country. My question is, he's touched on this earlier this evening. He knows I asked a question about this via email recently. and it's respect of the investment zones. Some of us call them deregulation zones. Why has there been no discussion in the wider council about these? Is Horizon 120 the only site that's been put forward by the district council? And if so, why? Because it's already has a special planning zone status. And have any other sites within the district been put forward?
We put forward also Springwood Industrial Estate as a potential site. Bear in mind, we won't be choosing these. This will be the result of the County Council taking all the sites put forward by by the second-tier authorities against what at the moment has been issued by central government as some of the key points that will be there. In terms of why hasn't there been discussion, Councillor Abbott, through you, Chairman, will be aware of the time that this has had to be done. We have to get it in by the 14th of October. I say we, the County Council has to get it in by the 14th of October. The County Council did not necessarily need to consult with districts and boroughs, but it has done so. And I welcome that approach by the County Council. I re-emphasise this is an initial expression of interest. There's a lot more questions that we will want answers to. I understand Councillor Abbott takes a view on this which is different from the view I take. He may well be part of the anti-growth coalition. I'm sure he isn't. But this is something which, there is an opportunity there, but we are not committed without knowing more. The reason I said for Horizon 120, I do believe publicly owned ones are likely to be able to be taken forward quicker. And also it means that we could, if it was granted, we would still control what went on there. Whereas if it's a private situation, we would have, and if, as Councillor Abbott says, or thinks it is, it's going to be deregulation, etc., we would not have that control. So that's why I think it's important, personally, that it should be publicly owned land, and that's what we would want to do.
Second question to Councillor Kevin Bowers. Strongly welcome the progress on affordable housing. Has Braintree District Council considered, or as a question, would Braintree District Council consider buying the old factory site in Silver End as a regeneration site to lead with affordable housing and possible mixed use for community use?
The answer to that would be no. At this stage, I think our affordable housing programme is strong, and it's been strong for a number of years. And if you compare it to other authorities, it stands up very, very positively. And I don't feel at this stage we need to consider any other sites. Thank you.
Third and final question for me for Councillor Gabriel Spray. When does the Cabinet Member for Planning expect that Braintree District Council will be back above the 5 years housing supply threshold? Or can we expect a yo-yo just above and just below this threshold with the huge planning uncertainty for BDC and our communities that brings? And does she and the Conservatives regret these leaflets saying that robust controls have been put on housing developers when it has today been announced that Braintree District Council will not defend 2 major appeals on unallocated land in this district?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Abbott will be well aware, as I think most members are now, because I've issued an email around to everybody and there have been press releases, that despite the best efforts of this council in granting planning permissions, we cannot, unfortunately, demonstrate a 5-year supply. That is not for want of trying. It's because we have to have clear, demonstrable evidence that sites are coming forward, either that they've started work or are clearly going to start work within 5 years. And there are a number of sites, small number, but they are significant, where we unfortunately can't demonstrate that at the moment. So we have fallen short under current government targets of the 5-year supply. We hope that the long-awaited planning reforms, which I believe are due to be announced within the next few weeks, might change the way that housing supply is calculated, and therefore that councils like ours that are trying their best and succeeding will not be unfairly penalised. I would say that by the time we have to calculate, if things stay the same, our next housing supply, which will be early spring next year, we are hopeful that we will have a 5-year supply, because those sites that at the moment that are not clearly demonstrable will come forward. We have a local plan in place approved by this council in July. That gives good protection. It would be nice to have the 5-year supply as well, but the local plan does give good protection, along with decisions made at planning committee where we have sound reasons, Chairman, to refuse planning applications, does give protection against speculative and unwanted development. And this council will continue to defend a refusal for speculative development. As Councillor Abbott is aware, we have 2 appeals pending, and I'm not going to talk about them specifically because I don't think it's appropriate this evening. One starts tomorrow and one in early December. We will be present at those appeals. I just want to make that clear. When we say we are not defending, doesn't mean that as a council we're not turning up, but we have had to say very clearly, no, we have not got a 5-year supply. But, you know, it's not that we're not going to be present at those appeals. And when we say we have robust measures in place against unwanted development, I stand by that absolutely. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. That concludes your questions, Councillor Abbott. Thank you. So, Councillor Beavis, as you conceded.
Thank you, Chairman, and through you, 2 quick questions, I think, to Councillor Gabrielle Spray, and I'm happy for a written response. Thank you, Chairman. First one is around the proposed new Headinghams Medical Centre, which I understand has been delayed for approximately a year, and I would like a written update on the position on that proposal, please, Chairman. Second one is, could the Council confirm to me whether they have yet agreed to the tender to put down the new Riverside Walk, linking Sybil and Castle Headingham together, or are the residents of the Headinghams going to have to face another muddy winter when local farmers are using a really good type of chipping on local footpaths to stop the muddiness? And just for the benefit of the Cabinet member, it is a route that a lot of the school children use, and we don't really want to go through yet another muddy winter. So I'd be really grateful for a written. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beavis.
Mr. Chairman, could I move suspension of standing orders for a further 10 minutes, please, to allow more questions?
Does that find a seconder? Then, show of hands for the vote then, please.
As long as there's questions from this side as well, Chairman. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll gladly do that.
10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes.
Well, so 25 past, I assume. But, yeah, fine.
Okay. So we're happy with the written response for Councillor?
Yes, Chairman, I'll provide a written response to Councillor Beavis on both those matters.
Thank you. Councillor Pell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a question to Councillor Cunningham about the Witham and Halstead Town Centre regeneration schemes. I see that the Halstead scheme now is the contractors expect to be appointed in March 2023, which looks like the programme has slipped again. But what I am concerned about is we heard earlier in the meeting that Halstead in Bloom did not enter the Anglia in Bloom competition, and the reason they didn't was because the regeneration works was going to take place. They will need to know, because they are planning now their works for next year. They raise their money through charities and things like that, that we need to know they're not going to plant up stuff and then have it destroyed, that you need to be able to work with them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very grateful for Councillor Mrs. Pell
not only just raising this tonight, but also the email I received from her last week, which I have sent to officers, the issue regarding Halstead in Bloom and the impact of that, which is extremely regrettable. And I've asked officers to look to see how we best as an authority can help them with that. It is a cause of regret that I'm sorry that there has been slippage in the programme plan for that. That's due to a number of reasons, of which will not sympathetic, which are unfortunate for Halstead, and I do regret that. What I intend to do, Mr. Chairman, is to hold a meeting in the next month where I update all local members in Halstead with regard to the Halstead scheme, and update Witham members with regard to the Witham scheme, as to where exactly we are, some of the issues we've faced, and allow them to bring forward any other concerns in order so that they are fully up to date with where we are with both important programmes, both important improvement schemes to complement our strategy to support all three town centres, and therefore hopefully give them and their local residents some comfort in terms of the delivery of what remains both schemes remain extremely important priorities for the administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dervish.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two questions, if I may. One is to Councillor Spray. Due to Braintree District Council now not being able to demonstrate a 5-year housing supply, on behalf of the residents within my ward, and in particular Hatfield Peveril, does this mean there will be another call for sites process? And my second question, if I may, is to Councillor Ritchie. I welcome within your report the raising awareness of domestic violence during the football, Christmas, November through to December. But may I ask, these measures are extended throughout the year, as domestic violence is all year round, 24/7. We need to be doing more to support those within our communities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman, and I thank Councillor Dervish for her question. So I can confirm that there is not a need for another call for sites. There are sufficient sites identified and allocated in our recently adopted local plan, and this council is granting planning permissions unless there are strong planning reasons not to do so. I won't repeat what I have just said in response to Councillor Abbott's question, because I think I was quite clear about that this council is making every effort to meet the 5-year supply, but it's lack of information from developers that holds us back. With regards to Hatfield Peveril, I do absolutely understand why Councillor Dervish has concerns. There was actually an application for development in that village which was passed at Planning Committee last Tuesday. In planning terms, it was a fairly modest application for 17 dwellings, but was not supported by her parish council because they have concerns about infrastructure. And actually, Councillor Dervish spoke very eloquently at that meeting on behalf of her residents and the parish council. Hatfield Peveril is one of 5 key service villages identified within the local plan, and that's because it has the necessary range of services to make it sustainable, more so than some other villages in the district. And at least one inspector at an appeal hearing has confirmed that Hatfield Peveril is, in planning terms, a sustainable location. However, I would say that both officers and the Planning Committee recognise the pressures on local services, particularly on the NHS. We do our very best to secure Section 106 monies to improve services, but as a district council, we don't control either the sums of money secured for the NHS or how that money is spent. And this applies obviously not just in Hatfield Peveril, but across the district. Now, if at some point those statutory consultees come forward and say that they object to a development, that obviously adds more weight to the harm and also gives a stronger reason for refusal. Now, having said all of that, this is not to say that every application now is going to be approved, regardless of our 5-year supply. We do take account of the harm that it might cause. where we don't feel there are strong enough reasons for, whether we feel there are strong reasons for refusal, it will be refused, and developers have to take their chance at an appeal. So I hope that gives some comfort to Councillor Dervish. We do act on planning points, and we do try and refuse applications where we feel we have a strong enough case. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So through you, thank you for your question, Councillor Dervish. I can absolutely assure you that this is just not a 3-month campaign. Domestic abuse at all levels is considered absolutely abhorrent, and we discuss that at the top of every agenda of every responsible authority group meeting and community safety partnership meeting. Obviously, we're just using this year as a one-off to highlight the issue that is a hidden harm and goes on 365 days of the year. We will keep that pressure on. Thank you, Councillor Dervish.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I have a question for Councillor Ritchie. As a long-term volunteer, I know how volunteering plays such an amazing and essential role within our district, and especially with what we've got coming up this winter. The BTC Awards evening is a great way to highlight this, and I wonder, does the Cabinet Member for the Community support these evenings?
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So through you, absolutely, it was great to have these evenings back. There was many members of this council that were present on that evening. Indeed, the Chairman and I were lucky enough to host those evenings, along with some dignitaries, including the High Sheriff and our local MP, James Cleverley, etc. It was a great turnout, and it does celebrate the very best of the volunteers within the Braintree district. As mentioned by the Chairman earlier, there was a few award winners who weren't able to make that evening, and we are holding an informal gathering on the 26th of October at the Town Hall to invite those that weren't present on that day to come and have some tea and cake and to pick up their awards. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Coleridge.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is for Councillor McKee. With the volatility in global financial markets at the moment and the subsequent effect that's having on interest rates and inflation and other sorts of measures in the economy, what sort of effect is that having on the Council's financial planning for the coming year?
Thank you very much for that question. It's true to say that the Cabinet, the Finance Department on behalf of the Cabinet are tracking all of the metrics that that affect every one of our services. Some are negative, some are positive, but the overall concern clearly is energy costs. Interest rates are two very negative indicators of our ability to manage services. But of course, recyclates are going up. So it's not a totally black picture. There are concerns in our investments in the market, but they are being tracked all the time. We take advice from external consultants, and the Finance Department do that regularly, particularly now, more regularly than they did in the past. And therefore, it is a watch list to see what happens to our investments, but also to all our costs and our borrowing requirements. It is an ongoing, almost daily update that the officers are doing, but it's relatively frequently with Cabinet members to make sure that we are aware of the impact that it's having upon our ability to serve, but also our investments in the market. I mean, I can't give you an assurance that we're not going to stop worrying, because we do. And we worry just tonight, in fact, what came in while we were in an earlier meeting, apparently gilt markets are tumbling again today. There's nothing we can do about that. We just have to be aware of it and take action when it matters to the way we behave as a council.
Thank you, Councillor McKee. Councillor Santamaro, you wish to declare an interest?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Sorry, belatedly, apologies. Non-pecuniary interest in the Braintree and Public Gardens as a trustee of the gardens. It's noted in Councillor Rich's report. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we're coming to the last minute of the meeting, I'll take Councillor Sandham as the final question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, written reply is fine. So it's great to hear that 10 parish councils have already put forward verges and green spaces in their areas for nature enhancement, either by wildflower planting or rewilding. Hopefully, as people see this happening more, there'll be a bit of a mindset shift to seeing the beauty in things being less manicured and a lot more helpful to wildlife and the environment. Just a few questions about the initiative. Is BDC considering including signage in any of the areas where the management of green spaces is being changed to help explain the reasoning and get more people on board? Also, on some residential greens, a compromise idea of planting a low-level clover grass seed mix on part of the area has been put forward as something that would still be very beneficial to biodiversity, but less of a dramatic change on a residential green, as it could still be mown with the same frequency. Is that something Braintree could be able to consider and trial? And finally, what sort of timeline are we looking at for the wildflower planting for those parishes that have come forward so far? And sorry, that was for Councillor Schmidt, if I didn't say.
That's fine. Thank you very much. So, as we've now run out of time, sorry, Councillor Schmidt, will you confirm you give a response?
I would appreciate the written reply. So I'm afraid Councillor Sandham was going so fast to get within the time. I didn't pick up half of what she said, and then I'll give a written response. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd actually say all members, if you wouldn't mind submitting your questions through, just so that we capture them ideally, and then a written reply can be given within 10 working days of this meeting and shared with all members. And to everybody else, I'm very sorry I didn't get to you, but again, please use the written questions via the governance team. Members, please, I'll get through this very quickly so we can close the meeting. We are still on webcast. Thank you. So as there's no further business on items on the agenda, that concludes the business for this meeting of full council. And a reminder that the next full council will be on the 12th of December 2022. Webcast of this meeting will be published on the council's YouTube channel as soon as possible. And if you have any feedback following this evening's meeting, please can you provide this directly to either Emma or Kim, who can consider it for future council meetings. So thank you, members, for your attendance and participation this evening, and to those watching on the council's YouTube channel. And I will close this meeting at full council at 10:27.